Chapter 954. Moreover, she was naked, and her mouth was making unbearable sounds. At the same time, his already feverish body became even more shameful. Although Li Jinnan had never had a woman before, he had heard a little about it. "This woman wants to sleep with me?" With a sullen face, Li Jinnan walked forward and lifted the blanket that was covering her body. However, what entered his eyes was a vibrant fragrance that made his blood boil. Yi Yu seemed to be aware of his arrival. She opened her eyes and wrapped herself around him. Uncomfortable, Li Jinnan was also uncomfortable. He wanted to push her away, but his body was stiff. Yi Yu's figure was not particularly good, but her proportion was very good. The reason why he had never had a woman before was at least because Li Jinnan did not have that desire. Now that it was like this, Li Jinnan had no intention of refusing. After all, he was 29 years old. He had a good impression of this girl. She was quite obedient. Li Jinnan pushed her down, but just as he was about to enter, he noticed an obvious barrier. He reached out and pushed her slightly. He asked, "First time?" Yi Yu did not answer, but responded with a very charming and jerky twist. A night of indulgence. The next day, Li Jinnan was awakened by the sound of her killing a pig. Yi Yu curled up in the quilt and shrank back in horror. She screamed again and again. You beast, you dare to touch me!" Yi Yu hugged the quilt and cried out. Beast, bastard, I didn't expect you to be such a person." Li Jinnan was speechless. His head was a little painful. Li Jinnan rubbed his temples and went forward to cover her mouth. Yi Yu closed her eyes, and tears began to stream down her cheeks. She cried her heart out. Li Jinnan's face was even more sullen. He whispered, "This is not interesting. You drugged me and took off all your clothes. You are my woman. Now the thief is crying thief." When Yi Yu heard that, she was furious. She took his hand down and shouted, "Damn pervert, damn beast, disgusting. You took advantage of me when I was drunk, and you have the nerve to say such things. You." Li Jinnan covered her mouth with a gloomy face. "What do you mean? Want money? Or a movie? Role? Just say it. There's no need to do this. A female celebrity sleeping with her boss. Are these the only requirements?" When Li Jinnan accepted it the night before, he had already mentally prepared himself. When Yi Yu heard those words, she felt even more humiliated. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she bawled. Tears and snot smeared all over Li Jinnan's hand, and his face darkened. Be asterisk starred. Yi Yu hugged the blanket and wailed. Li Jinnan was infuriated. With a dark expression, he said, "If you continue to pretend, you won't get anything." When Yi Yu heard that, she flew into a rage. She lunged forward to hit him, but he clamped her hands down and pinned her beneath his body. Li Jinnan squinted at her and said, "Playing hard to get? Want to do it again?" Yi Yu sobbed, gritted her teeth, and turned her face away. She said, "You can go. I'll just take it that I was ked by a dog." "Are you calling me a dog?" Li Jinnan almost went crazy. "I never expected you to be that kind of person. How dare you call a thief a thief?" As he spoke, he pulled Yi Yu up. "Go get the surveillance footage." Chapter 955. However, when he went to the security room to check the surveillance footage, he found that it was Yi Yu who stumbled into the room. She was unbuttoning her clothes as she walked. After about an hour, Li Jinnan finally walked in. In between, Li Jinnan also had a sufficient alibi. Yi Yu was stunned. She frowned and tried to recall. In her mind, there seemed to be a voice tempting her. "Go to room VIP 888. Go inside. Someone can help you." But who? Yi Yu couldn't remember. She frowned, but she was sure that it was not Li Jinnan. Li Jinnan looked at the screen and turned to look at Yi Yu. Yi Yu felt guilty and shrank her neck. "Now how do you explain it?" Li Jinnan took a step forward, and Yi Yu took a step back. Her face was full of fear. Li Jinnan's usually calm eyes suddenly became turbulent. He looked at Yi Yu with deep warning. "Now that the evidence is conclusive, you first drugged me, and then went to my room in advance to wait for me? Then, as soon as I went in, you jumped on me. Am I right?" Yi Yu was so angry that her face turned red. She shouted, "I am not that thirsty." Then, Who was the person who hugged me last night and said that she wanted me? Li Jinan quickly asked. The people in the security room were dumbfounded. That was explosive. This is too exciting. Yi Yu's face turned even redder. She raised her chest and shouted. It must be because you coveted my beauty and wanted to do something to me for a long time, right? I didn't expect you to look like a dog. I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Bah! The pressure around Li Jinan suddenly dropped. He took a step forward. His face was dangerously cold. He stared at her with his phoenix eyes. Say that again? Yi, you coward. Her back hit the wall. She bowed her head and said, I was wrong. The security guards in the security room immediately laughed. Yi Yu's face was burning. She wanted to raise her head and say something to save her dignity. However, when she met Li Jinnan's eyes, she immediately became timid. She whispered, Can we go out first? Li Jinnan's face softened a little, and he straightened up. Yi Yu immediately pushed him away and ran out. Li Jinnan turned his head and looked at the people in the security room. He narrowed his eyes and warned, If what happened today goes out. No, don't worry, third young master, we will never say a word. The security guards nodded and swore. After receiving the affirmation, Li Jinnan stepped out and followed closely behind her. Soon, the two of them walked out together. Yi Yu endured the discomfort in her legs and quickly walked out of the hotel. When she looked back, she found that Li Jinnan was still following her. She was shocked and shouted, What do you want to do? I should be the one asking you that. I need to calm down. You want to run away just like that. Li Jinnan put his hands into his coat pockets and looked at her. Yi Yi was going crazy. She roared. What do you want then? I'm hungry. Let's eat. Li Jinnan looked at her and said, Your treat. I didn't bring any money. Then it's my treat, let's go. Li Jinnan pulled Yi Yu over and looked around. His eyes darkened. Someone was following them. He should be in existence similar to a private detective. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so vigilant. Chapter 956. After getting into the car, Yi Yu said she wanted to eat dessert. Li Jinnan randomly found a shopping mall and went in. Yi Yu looked at Li Jinnan, who was obviously very unhappy, and said weakly, It's really not me, third master Li. You know I don't have the guts to do such a thing when you see me being so cowardly, right? Li Jinnan listened and said seriously, You are very cowardly. Yi Yu felt like an arrow was shot in her heart. She raised her eyes and glared at him. Li Jinnan's face was very close to hers, and Yi Yu's heart was beating faster. Her face was getting redder and redder. Li Jinnan looked at her and asked, Nervous? No, I'm not nervous. No way. Yi Yu's heart was about to jump out of her chest. She looked at Li Jinnan's face and swallowed. Li Jinnan leaned forward slightly and easily pressed her against the wall. He asked, What about this? Yi Yu's face was even redder. Her eyes stared at the red lips in front of her, and her heart was beating fast. Yi Yu pursed her lips and did not speak. Li Jinnan slightly narrowed his eyes and lowered his head to her lips. Yi Yu saw through his intention at a glance. She immediately turned her head and pushed him hard, shouting, GM Li, I am really married. My husband is Shun Luoan. Shun Luoan? Li Jinnan felt that the name was inexplicably familiar. After thinking about it, he realized who this person was. Looking at Yi Yu in surprise, Li Jinnan raised his eyebrows and said bluntly, I have never heard of Shun Luoan's marriage. I said it's a secret marriage, a secret marriage. Let's keep a low profile when we get married. Well, Li Jinnan thought for a moment, shook the red wine in his hand, and handed it to Yi Yu. Have a drink. No, I have to go back. It's too late. It's very dangerous to be with a man, especially a beautiful and sexy woman like me. If I drink wine, I can't guarantee what you will do to me. I must be careful. Yi Yu said seriously. Li Jinnan was silent for a moment. When Yi Yu saw that, she stood up and tried to walk out. Li Jinnan slammed the glass on the table. Yi Yu froze on the spot. Yi Yu was terrified. She stood there and asked, What? I haven't finished my second question. Go ahead and ask. Yi Yu turned her head and glared at him. Last night was your first time, right? It was not a question but a statement. The obvious obstruction, the eye-catching red stain, and the look on her face, as if her parents had died, made Li Jinnan certain that it was her first time. At the mention of that, Yi Yu almost burst into tears again. She looked at him with reddened eyes. When Li Jinnan saw that, he was even more certain. He narrowed his eyes and laughed coldly. Since you've already been married for more than 2 months, why would there be a first? Is your man incompetent? Yi Yu's initially composed expression crumbled in an instant. Chapter 957. When Li Jinnan heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. Looking at her back, his eyes were full of sarcasm. It's also my first time, Li Jinnan said helplessly. It seems that I'm at a disadvantage. Li Jinnan picked up the glass of red wine and took a sip. Picking up the phone, Li Jinnan swiped through the address book, found Luo Zhan's number and dialed it. Luo Zhan was playing games when he suddenly received a call. He was a little annoyed, but after seeing the caller, he felt a little surprised. Third brother Li? Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan didn't wait for him to speak first and teased. Oh, what kind of wind is blowing? Even the third brother Li came here. What's the matter? Li Jinnan heard the teasing, but he was not annoyed. He said, Brother Luo, how do you know that I have something to ask you for help? Well, you two brothers are the same. If there is nothing, will you come back to me? The answer was of course impossible. So what do you want? Well, I don't know anyone in the National Marriage Bureau, so I have to ask you for help. You want to get married? Luo Zhan was interested. Who is the partner? A man or a woman? Li Jinnan said. If it is a man, my grandfather will strangle me before my father kills me. Ha ha ha. Who is it? Oh, the third brother Li has grown up. Tell me, who is the partner? What's her name? How old is she? These are not important. I want you to help me find out if this woman is married. Luo Zhan was stunned. No way, you actually like a married woman? It's just a possibility. I suspect she is lying to me. What the hell, do you like her? Not really. Li Jinnan put down the red wine glass in his hand and said, I just slept with her. I can't say that I like her, but I feel good. Oh, the third brother Li is also enlightened. He actually went to sleep with a woman. Okay, name and ID number, I will help you. Well, wait a minute, let me check it. Do you know who he is married to? You can tell me the name. Yi Yu Shen Luoan. Okay, wait a minute. Luo Zhan's fingers quickly jumped on the keyboard and exclaimed, Hey, isn't this guy the scientist in the capital? It seems so. Li Jinnan also heard a little about Shen Luoan's identity. Yes, Yi Yu and Shen Luo are husband and wife, and they registered their marriage in August. Really? Li Jinnan frowned and suddenly thought of something. He reached into his trouser pocket and took out a ring. Suddenly, he thought of something and took it. And put Jinnan feed it. It was very valuable. Was this ring really their wedding ring? It. Brother it. Ui, he said t li I. I ui up. I t it t. Lut. Li. Chapter 958. These two brothers are the same. They deserve to be beaten. Luo Zhan was so angry that he threw his phone away. He suddenly remembered that he hadn't finished the game yet. When he went back to check, he had been reported. He wailed, Damn it, I'm so sorry. Yi Yu went out of Li Jinnan's villa and quickly went out to take a taxi. But when the car started, she suddenly realized that her wedding ring was still with Li Jinnan. Yi Yu was a little angry, but she didn't have the courage to go back. What if Li Jinnan felt that it didn't matter if he did it once or twice, and forced her to do it with him? What should I do? It's too dangerous. While Yi Yu was struggling, she heard the phone ring again. It was her sister Yi Qianqian. She picked up the phone. Hello, sister. Yi Qianqian heard her voice and was slightly relieved. She asked, Where are you? Are you okay? Have you gone home? Well, I'm in the car. Hey, you have to be careful. It's not easy for you to get married to Brother Luoan. Don't make any trouble. You know how much the old lady of the Shen family hates you. Yi Yu also felt uncomfortable. She nodded and said, I know, sister. There won't be a next time. Yi Qianqian was not a fool. When she heard what Li Jinnan said today, she vaguely seemed to guess something. She asked, Last night, were you with that Li Jinnan? Reflexively, Yi Yu immediately replied, No. However, after saying it, She felt that her reaction seemed to be too much. She calmed down and said, "No, how could I be with him? He is the boss of our company. Last night, the movie I starred in was finished. Although it was only a supporting role, I still had a performance, right? So I just drank some wine with him. That's all." "Really?" Yi Qianqian obviously didn't believe it. Yi Yu's heart was pounding, but she said with certainty, "Yes, it's true." When Yi Qianqian heard this, she nodded and said, "You're not a child anymore. You have to know what you can do, and what you can't do. The people of the Shen family are waiting to see you make a fool of yourself, especially the old woman of the Shen family. If you do something wrong, she may drive you out on the spot. If you want to stay with Shen Luoyin, it will be very difficult." Yi Yu's chest tightened as she thought about the mistake she had made the night before. He was already wrong. The only thing he could do now was not to be discovered. "Okay, I got it. I won't. Sleep early. Good night, sister." After hanging up, Yi Qianqian felt a little uneasy. Yi Yu was still young, and she had been spoiled from a young age. Could she really continue to stay in a place like the Shen family, where they would swallow her whole without spitting out the bones? As Yi Qianqian thought about it, she fell asleep without realizing it. The next day, Monday, Eulili got up very early. She put on her sportswear and went for a morning jog. Eulili bought breakfast on the way back. When she came back, it was already 8:10 in the morning, but Yi Qianqian had not gotten up yet. She went to knock on the door. After Eulili knocked on the door for a long time, Yi Qianqian came out lazily. When she opened the door and smelled the breakfast, Yi Qianqian's eyes lit up. Chapter 959. Seeing the sportswear on Eulili, Yi Qianqian felt like she had seen a new human being. She shouted, "Wow, Lily, your work and rest are so regular. You can wake me up every day, and I will definitely not be late. I think you should go running with me every day. Not only will you not be late, but you will also be healthy." When Yi Qianqian heard that, she immediately waved her hand and said, "Forget it. I choose to be a quiet, beautiful woman." Hearing that, Eulili glanced at her, quickly ate her breakfast and said, "How do you usually go to work?" "By bike. My little donkey is parked downstairs. Unfortunately, it is a single car, so only one person can ride it." Yi Qianqian took a bite of the bun and said, "Wait for me. After I finish eating, let's walk together. I'll show you the way." Yi Qianqian ate slowly. Eulili looked at her and felt a little sorry for her. She said, "No, I'll go by myself. I've just checked the spots. You can go by bike and eat slowly." Yi Qianqian was a little embarrassed. "Oh, okay." Yi Qianqian took a sip of soy milk. "I don't want to walk." Eulili chuckled. After changing her clothes, she went out. It was exactly 8:30. Eulili walked in the direction of the company. She wore flat shoes and looked at the scenery all the way. The surrounding environment was good, and the location should be more expensive than she thought. Eulili walked forward for about 10 minutes and passed through a busy section of the road. There were various markets and stalls selling fruit and flowers nearby. There were many people here, but today the people were particularly harmonious. Just beside the road, an old lady in a beautiful qipao was lying. Many people passed by, but they just glanced at her and then immediately walked away. Eulili felt a little angry when she saw such a scene. An old lady was lying on the side of the road, and no one went to help her. However, on second thought, she felt that this kind of mentality was normal. After all, there were many people who blackmailed people. However, Eulili looked at the old lady's chest up and down, and felt that something was wrong. Eulili stepped forward, not daring to get too close. She glanced at the old lady's face, and found that the old lady's face looked very ugly, a little blue and a little white. His breathing was rapid, and his chest was heaving up and down. When Eulili saw that, she knew that something was wrong. She stepped forward, but the person next to her shouted, "Miss, don't go over. Those old men and women are very picky. What if you go over and say that it was your fault?" A middle-aged woman carrying a basket kindly reminded him. That was exactly what worried Eulili the most. Now Eulili had nothing, especially money. If she was blackmailed by this old lady again, she could really go to hell. But this old lady looked very strange. What if they really killed such an old lady because of everyone's inaction? Lily didn't think she was a kind person, but when she saw the situation, she couldn't just walk away. Lily looked around and said, "Auntie, if something really happens later, please testify for me." Chapter 960. Lily reached out to check the old lady's breathing, and found that the old lady's breathing was very weak. Suddenly, the old lady raised her hand and held Lily's wrist that was checking her breathing. Lily was caught off guard. Her heart skipped a beat as she looked at the old lady, who had suddenly come back to life with a face full of horror. When she was about to speak, she saw that the old lady's eyes almost popped out. She struggled to open her mouth and shouted, "Help me." Lily was shocked and saw the old lady's eyes turn over and lie down. Lily checked the old lady's heartbeat and found that it was still beating, but it was very weak, and her breathing was very small. Shocked, Lily helped the old lady up and shouted, "Everyone help me. The old lady really can't make it. I know there is a hospital nearby. Which way to go?" "Turn left at the intersection," a woman shouted. Lily carried the old lady, but no one was willing to help. Lily was disappointed. When Lily dragged the old lady to the hospital, she immediately sent her to the emergency room. The doctor gave the old lady's belongings to Lily. Lily found that the old lady was quite fashionable. The mobile phone she used was the latest model of Apple, which was the same model she was using now. Unexpectedly, there was no password. Lily looked through the address book and found that all the saved names were related, such as husband, son, eldest grandson, second grandson, etc. Lily directly called the old lady's son. The old lady's son's mobile phone belonged to the capital. Lily felt a little surprised. The old lady's son quickly picked up. "Hello, Mom, where have you been? I have been looking for you for a long time." Listening to the voice, it should be a middle-aged man with a pure northern accent. Being called mother by such a person, Lily was a little embarrassed and said, "The old lady just fainted on the side of the road." However, before Lily finished her words, the man on the other side had already exploded and roared. "What? Fainted?" Lily was shocked by his roar, and her voice suddenly stopped. A voice quickly came from the other side and asked, "Where are you now?" "I sent her to the hospital. This is the Second People's Hospital of Kingstown. The old lady is still in the emergency room." "Kingstown? How did she go to Kingstown? This old lady is too troublesome." Lily was speechless. "Old woman, is she talking about my mother? Wait a minute, I'll ask my daughter to go over. Give me your number." "Ah, mine. You could have just come over. Why did you take my number?" Lily had a bad feeling. "Oh girl, you have to help me save my mother first. This old lady is not very smart. When she wakes up, she will definitely look for you. Leave your phone number so that I can find you." No, I don't have any money here. The doctor will ask me for medical fees later. I'd better go now. I've left everything at the front desk. Tell your daughter to come quickly. Miss." Lily was so scared that she hung up the phone. She left everything at the front desk. The old lady had a lot of money in her wallet, enough to pay for the emergency treatment. Chapter 961. Who knew that not only the old lady's son asked for her number, but also the receptionist asked for her number, saying that it was convenient for family members to thank her. Lily thought about it and wrote down the phone number. As soon as she finished writing, her phone rang. It was Editor-in-Chief Joe. What made Lily even more depressed was that it was almost 10 o'clock. That was to say, she was an hour late. Lily quickly took a taxi to the company and sprinted to the company as fast as she could. When she saw it was 10 o'clock, Lily wanted to cry but had no tears. Unexpectedly, "I'm late again." Lily went to Editor-in-Chief Joe's office and admitted her mistake. Her attitude was very good. Unexpectedly, when Editor-in-Chief Joe saw her, she just sighed, stepped forward, pointed to Lily's head and said, You live with Yi Chantian now, don't you? Why are you late when Yi Chantian is not late?" Lily lowered her head and said with a guilty conscience, "I met an old lady on the way. She fainted, so I took her to the hospital. I'm late." "You actually went to do something for the sake of justice? Weren't you afraid that the other party was trying to blackmail you? I was afraid. But if the old lady died, I would have nightmares. Editor-in-Chief Joe looked contemptuous and said, You said it as if it was true. It was true. Well, I wanted to promote you to be an editor. Look at you. How can I promote you? Editor-in-Chief Joe sighed. Thank you for what you did last time. Lily was sure that Editor-in-Chief Joe didn't mean to scold her. She breathed a sigh of relief and looked up. It's okay. Pay attention next time. Don't be late again. You have to do a good job. Because of the comic love transaction, the number of downloads of our app has increased dramatically. Now Ziyu and Yi Qianqian are too busy. We need to promote another person to be an editor. When Shan Yu heard about this, she has been very active recently. You have to work hard. I still favor you. Lily felt a little embarrassed. She scratched her face and said, Is this a backdoor? Editor-in-Chief Joe glared at her and said, No. Go to work. Yes. Lily immediately turned and walked out. Shan Yu had just returned to her seat. Lily didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the way Shan Yu looked at her was a little weird. With a friendly smile, Lily turned on the computer and started working. However, in the afternoon Lily received a call. It was a cell phone number from the capital. Lily guessed that it should be the old lady's family that morning. He picked up the phone. Hello. Are you Miss Yu? The girl who used my mom's phone to call me this morning? The voice was still the same as in the morning, but the tone was much friendlier. Yes, Lily replied. Oh, thank you so much. The doctor said that if I were a little late, my mother would be gone. Are you free now? I'm at work. I'm a little busy. Lily looked at the tall pile of contracts and felt a little awkward. If that's the case, can you come to the hospital when you're free after work? My mom has woken up. She wants to see you. All right, then I'll get busy first. Chapter 962. Politeness was mutual. Lily was in a good mood when she heard such a tone. In the afternoon, when Lily got off work, Yi Qianqian rode her bike and told Lily that she was going to buy groceries and went back. Lily was not in a hurry to go back. Instead, she went to the hospital. After asking about the old lady's situation, Lily went to a ward. It turned out to be a VIP ward. Lily was a little shocked when she saw this. It seemed that this family was rich. In the morning, she was worried that it might be a scam. She really thought too much. She knocked on the door and walked in. At a glance, she saw Enchanting standing inside. Lily was stunned. At the same time, Enchanting was also shocked and blurted out, It's you? In the ward, in addition to Enchanting, there was also an old lady lying in bed. Next to her sat a middle-aged man, who looked a little fat. He had a round face and a smile on his face. He wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, and his skin was a little white. At first glance, it was a classic face of a rich man, but his facial features were very regular. It was not difficult to imagine that he must have been handsome in the past. When the middle-aged man heard Encanting's voice, he looked up at Lily and asked, Manting, do you know this girl? Encanting put her hands in her pockets and said with some dissatisfaction, How can I not know her? Isn't she Oming's mistress? Mistress? These two words were filled with ridicule, contempt, disdain and hostility. Lily's face suddenly changed and became extremely ugly. When the middle-aged man heard that, his face also changed, and he turned to look at Encanting. Encanting suddenly realized that she had said something wrong and shouted, Dad! Oming has a mistress outside? Do you want to marry this kind of man? The middle-aged man's face became ugly, and he looked at Lily with a different look. Encanting stuttered and said, Enough. The old lady suddenly spoke with indescribable majesty in her voice, with a slightly low voice of warning. No matter who he is, it is true that he saved me. While speaking, the old lady looked at Lily, and her eyes were undoubtedly much softer. She waved at her and said, Little girl, come to me. Lily didn't look too good, and her smile was a little forced. The middle-aged man, who had been polite just a moment ago, now looked at her with contempt, just like everyone else, because she had called him a mistress. Lily's heart was indescribably sad. Seeing the old lady waving, she not only did not go over, but also took a step back and said, "Seeing that the old lady is fine, I am relieved. I will go back first. Goodbye." "Come here, girl," the old lady shouted, but Yulily's footsteps became faster and faster. Soon, she was out of the ward and out of the corridor. The old lady was a little annoyed. She patted her son and shouted, "Go and bring that girl back." "Do you want me to die of anger?" The old lady's son quickly stood up and walked out. Seeing Yulily's back, he chased after her and stopped in front of her. Chapter 963. You are too polite. I am a junior. You don't have to say that to me. Yulily smiled reluctantly. "I still have something to do. I have to go." "Miss, I'm sorry. The middle-aged man blocked her way and said with a troubled expression, "My mother seems to like you very much. If you leave now, I'm afraid my mother will break my legs. It's too dangerous." Yulily saw his embarrassed look and smiled. When the middle-aged man saw her smile, he took the opportunity to act cute and said, "Do you have the heart to watch me die?" Yulily looked at him and inexplicably felt that this uncle was very cute, but she still bowed her head and said, "Uncle, I also want to help you, but my identity is not suitable to appear in front of your family. Sorry, I have to go." "What identity?" "Your current identity is my mother's savior. That's a different thing, right?" The middle-aged man reached out to her and said, "My name is Shun Longyue. What's your name?" "Yulily." Yulily reached out and gently shook his hand, but soon let go. "Well, now we know each other. Let's go in." The middle-aged man looked embarrassed and begged, pointing to the road ahead. Yulily looked at Shun Longyue and turned back into the ward. As soon as she entered, she saw the old lady looking at Yulily. The old lady's eyes stared at Yulily's face for a long time. Yulily was a little scared. She subconsciously touched her face and looked at Shun Longyue behind her. Shun Longyue was also a little embarrassed. He said, "Don't be offended. My mother is more. Well, she is a fortune teller. She likes to look at other people's faces and hands. It's physiognomy and palmistry. You can ask my mother to look at it. She is very accurate." Yulily had always been an atheist, but she still believed in fortune-telling and physiognomy. She didn't know if it was superstition, but she had an indescribable belief in these things. The old lady stared at Yulily for a long time and said, "Girl, what is your name?" "Yulily. Her name is Yulily. I told you, Grandma." Shun Manting sat under the stool next to the old lady and looked at Yulily unhappily. Yulily nodded, feeling a little strange. She was sitting face to face with her love rival in the ward of her love rival's grandmother. It was a very magical experience, even though she had broken up with Oming. Old Mrs. Shun nodded and smiled. She reached out to Yulily and said, "The name is very nice, but your life is already light. With this name, it will be even lighter. You should change your name. How about Shininua?" "Huh." Yulily was a little confused. "Change my name?" This changing her name the first time they met? That wasn't too good, was it? Yulily felt a little strange and looked at Shun Longyue. Unexpectedly, Shun Longyue said helplessly and awkwardly, "My mother is like this. Don't mind her. Just listen to her." Chapter 964. Hearing that, Yulily was stunned. Before the age of 25, I will have bad luck with my parents, husband and son? Indeed, she had no parents. As for her husband, it seemed that he didn't kill Oming, but he lost his child. Old Mrs. Shun looked at Yulily with a serious face and said, "Before the age of 25, you will be very unlucky, especially after the age of 20. You will face a life and death catastrophe. If you survive, your future will be unimaginable. If I'm not wrong, you should be 24 years old now, right?" Yulily was stunned, nodded, and said, "Yes, that's right." "Show me your palm." Yulily stretched out her left hand. Male left, female right. Then, Yulily stretched out her right hand. The old lady looked at Yulily's palm and said, "You should have been born during the Chinese New Year, but the time of your birth was too hot. You should know that when things reach an extreme, they will go in the opposite direction. So your life was shortened. Before the age of 3, you will have a big disaster. If you can survive it, you will live. After the age of 25, you will enjoy all the glory and wealth and live a happy life. You will have a son and a daughter. You will be successful in your career and have both fame and wealth. The only thing you need to do is to prevent your husband's love. You will suffer a little before the age of 25. Listening to the old lady's words, Eulalie subconsciously wanted to take a seat. Looking at the old lady, she felt a little magical. Ennchanting was not happy and said, "Grandma, why did you tell me a bad fortune, but a good fortune for her?" Old Mrs. Shun looked at Ennchanting and said, "Everyone has their own fate. I have already told you about your fate. Grasp everything now and don't be easily shaken. No matter what trouble you encounter, don't let go. Then your life will be beautiful otherwise." The fate of Ennchanting that old Mrs. Shun said made Eulalie subconsciously think of Oming. Is it to let Ennchanting hold on to Oming and not let go? No matter what kind of trouble you encounter, don't let go. Eulalie felt a little magical. Is it fun to be spoiled in advance? Eulalie didn't know, but after hearing such words, she was in a very good mood. Whether it is true or not, I have survived for so long. Isn't it worth celebrating? But who is her husband? Is it Oming? It shouldn't be Oming, right? After having her life spoiled, Eulalie listened to old Mrs. Shun's words more attentively. The old lady seemed to like Eulalie very much. After talking to her for a long time, she became sleepy. After coaxing old Mrs. Shun to lie down, Eulalie finally breathed a sigh of relief. He took out his phone to check the time. After saying goodbye to Shun Longyue, he walked out. Ennchanting quickly caught up and shouted, "Eulalie!" Eulalie turned her head and looked at Ennchanting. Speaking of which, this was the first time she had spoken to Ennchanting face-to-face without knowing each other's identities. Eulalie stood still, faced Ennchanting and asked, "What?" "Congratulations, your luck is about to change, but I won't let go of Oming. You should give up." Ennchanting was arrogant and domineering. She crossed her arms over her chest and looked superior. Eulalie laughed. "Thank you, but we've already broken up." "Really?" Ennchanting asked doubtfully. "You'll break up with him?" Chapter 965. "Yes, we broke up." Eulalie shrugged and turned to leave. "Wait a minute." Ennchanting caught up and stopped in front of Eulalie, saying, "I think the name my grandmother gave you is very nice." "Cheninua?" Eulalie raised her eyebrows in surprise. Ennchanting was a little proud and nodded, saying, "Yes, but I think changing a word will be more suitable for you. It's better to call it Don't Be Lascivious. Don't be lascivious and seduce other men. How good is that? Don't cling to Oming anymore. You also heard my grandmother say that you will have another husband. It's good to let him go earlier." Hearing that, Eulalie's eyes became cold and said, "It's very good. Your modified name is very suitable for you. Keep it for yourself, Miss Lascivious." As she said that, Eulalie walked forward, pushed her away and walked up. Ennchanting's cheeks puffed up and said, "You know, my wedding date with Oming has been set. I will send you an invitation. You must come." Eulalie's face became more and more gloomy, and she kept walking forward. The hospital was not far from the community, where Yi Qianqian's house was located. Eulalie walked for about 10 minutes to the gate of the community. It was already past 7 o'clock in the evening, and the surrounding sky was very dark. Just under the street lamp at the gate of the community, a Bentley was parked. Just next to the Bentley, there was a burgundy figure leaning. When he saw Eulalie, he straightened up and walked toward her. But Eulalie acted as if she didn't see him, walked around him, and walked forward. Suddenly, a big hand took Eulalie's hand. It was very cold. All kinds of clothes. Eulalie could clearly feel the coldness from his hand. Looking back, his pair of peach blossom eyes, with yellow street lights in his deep eyes, were overflowing with love. Eulalie's heart was slightly moved, but soon she looked away, broke his hand, and did not speak. The man behind her was not willing to let go. His voice was low and hoarse, as if coming from thousands of mountains and rivers. He said, "Eulalie, I miss you." Eulalie pursed her lips, reached out to hold his wrist, looked at him, and pulled him away. Then she took 2 steps back, turned around, and walked quickly into the community. From the beginning to the end, he did not say a word. Oming looked at her back. His heart was terribly empty and in turmoil. Such a Eulalie was more distressing than ever. However, it was still a little short. When she got home, Yi Qianqian was watching a Korean drama with a bag of chips in her hands. When he saw Yu Lily coming back, he said, "I've already bought some groceries and put them in the fridge. How is old lady Ge?" "Not bad. She even read my fortune." Yu Lily changed her shoes and went to the bathroom before walking into the kitchen. "Would you like some noodles?" "N." While watching the Korean drama, Yi Qianqian suddenly yelled, "I'm stuck. The male lead is scolding the female lead. I can't take it anymore. Ah, the male lead is becoming more and more of a scumbag." Yu Lily took a pot and filled it with water. She stared blankly at the water flowing down. Can't men in Korean dramas scold women? Of course not. The female lead should be cherished and cherished. How could you scold her? Scumbag, scumbag, scumbag. What about real life? That depends on how you scold him. Chapter 966. When Yi Qianqian heard that, she got angry and said, "Why don't you keep him for the new year?" Yu Lily chuckled and felt the heat from the stove. Her eyes were empty. Yi Qianqian felt something was wrong. She looked at her and asked, "Did your boyfriend scold you like that?" "Don't. Let's talk about it. Don't break up. Otherwise, it will be bad if he blames me in the future." "We already broke up." Yu Lily turned her head and picked up the egg noodles and vegetables. She slowly processed them and said, "We can't wait for the new year. There are more important things to do during the new year." Well, Yi Qianqian felt something was wrong. Really? When? Traveling during the new year. Yu Lily put the noodles in and looked at Yi Qianqian with a smile. "Do you have any plans? If you don't, how about traveling together?" "Sure." Yi Qianqian looked excited. "When is the new year?" "During the new year, between the first and second day of the new year." Well, the smile on Yi Qianqian's face gradually disappeared. "No, I have to go home. I haven't been home all year. If I don't go home during the new year, my mother will kill me." "I understand." Yu Lily looked at the steam rising from the pot while cooking the noodles. She looked down and said, "I'm just saying. I used to travel alone. When she wasn't with Oming, she worked part-time during the new year. During the years when she was with Oming, she went everywhere during the new year. After she broke up with Oming, Yu Lily spent the next few years walking and stopping. As she walked, she painted, and sometimes she felt sad. Originally, she thought that she wouldn't be able to make it through the new year. Unexpectedly, she was still alive and well." Yi Qianqian felt a little sorry for Yu Lily, but she didn't say it. She quickly changed the topic. They ate the noodles together. After washing the dishes, Yu Lily went back to her room to paint. But she was really not in a good mood. Yu Lily lay on the bed, picked up the headphones, plugged them in, and turned on the monitor plug-in in Shen Manting's phone. Shen Manting seemed to be on her way home. There was the sound of cars driving and honking. At the same time, there was the sound of the car radio. After about half an hour, it finally quieted down. Yu Lily could clearly hear the sound of Shen Manting's high heels, the sound of her entering the password, and the sound of the door opening. However, after Shen Manting closed the door, she exclaimed in surprise. Even Yu Lily felt a little creeped out by the sound. Then, she opened her mouth and shouted, Big brother, why are you here?" "Big brother? That's Shen Luoan, right?" She pricked up her ears and heard the man's footsteps. Shen Manting retreated in fear. Then she heard the sound of something being hit. "Big brother, don't," Shen Manting said in a sobbing voice. "You said that as long as I get married before this year, you will." Yu Lily was shocked and looked up. Was Shen Manting in danger? However, wasn't the other party Big Brother? Why was there such a sound? Shoo! Shen Luoan's voice was unexpectedly pleasant to the ears. It was like a thick subwoofer. "I said that as long as you get married before this year, I won't touch you." Chapter 967. In Yu Lily's heart, there was a word that was running amok. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. She seemed to have stumbled upon a huge secret. But then, Shen Manting's bag seemed to be thrown far away. After several collisions, Yu Lily could hear the sound over there, but she couldn't hear it clearly. Shen Luo and took the bag from Shen Manting's hand and threw it into the room. The bag rolled from the sofa to under the coffee table, far away from them. Shen Manting looked at Shen Luo, and in front of her in horror, and kept shrinking back. Shen Luo saw Shen Manting like this, and his eyes were a bit gentle, but his actions were overbearing. He approached her step by step and said, "But Oming doesn't like you at all. Can't you see it?" Shen Manting looked at him with red eyes and said, "I will get married this year. And my grandmother also hopes that I will get married before this year. I can't let her down. Brother, you should give up. We are brother and sister." Shen Luo smiled as usual, gentle as jade. However, he stretched out his hands and placed them on both sides of her body. He leaned forward and said in a threatening manner, "What kind of brother and sister are we? You know very well that we aren't related by blood. It's just my wishful thinking that allowed me to recognize you. You also know that my brain isn't that good." Shen Manting shrank back in fear and almost cried out. She shouted, "Brother, you can't do this." Shen Luo suddenly approached her and pressed her against him. Shen Manting groaned and turned her head away. Shen Luo said, "When I asked you to choose between Li Xiqing, Oming and me, you should have chosen me instead of that playboy. Now, do you regret it?" "Brother, don't do this." Shen Manting was about to cry. "Don't be afraid." Shen Luo was obviously a lot calmer. "I mean what I say." Shen Luo's gentle eyes were stained with sharpness. He squatted down and looked her in the eyes. "But you'd better be clean. Don't let me find out about this dirty trick again." Shen Manting looked up in shock. "How did you? Don't be too lucky. I know everything." Shen Luo looked at her deeply. Then, the sound of his footsteps faded away, and the door was closed. She finally heaved a sigh of relief, but the fear and guilt in her heart overflowed. How could this be? How could this be? Shen Manting's body gradually collapsed and she leaned against the door. After a long time, she got up from the ground and stumbled over to find her cell phone to make a call. Eulili hadn't heard anything just now. Now that Shen Manting picked up the phone, she could hear the voice on the other end. "What should I do? Big brother is looking for me again." Eulili did not expect to hear such a big secret. Shen Manting and Shen Luo have some kind of ambiguous relationship? But wasn't Yi married to Shen Luo? Shen Luo had an affair with his own sister. What a mess. Eulili felt that her brain capacity wasn't enough. She stood up abruptly and subconsciously wanted to tell Yi Qianqian about it. Chapter 968. If I'm found out, will I be treated as a pervert? Eulili felt a little distressed and frowned. While she was hesitating, Yi Qianqian's door was suddenly opened. She was caught off guard and saw a person standing at the door. Yi Qianqian's heart skipped a beat and she jumped back. When he saw that it was Eulili, he was scared out of his wits. "You scared me to death. What are you doing here?" Eulili was also shocked. Faced with Yi Qianqian's question, she couldn't help feeling guilty. "Well, what am I doing here?" Eulili didn't know how to explain herself. After thinking for a while, she still couldn't think of what to say. She saw Yi Qianqian's face was strange. She approached cautiously step by step, looked at her suspiciously and said, "Are you gay? And a gay voyeur?" Eulili narrowed her eyes and said, "Even if I'm gay, I won't like this kind of person." Hearing that, Yi Qianqian's face puffed up. She looked unconvinced and said angrily, "What's wrong with me? How am I bad? I have breasts and a butt. I'm not bad at all." Eulili looked suspicious and shook her head. "I really can't see how you are not bad." Yi Qianqian received a critical hit and almost beat her up, but she quickly snorted and said, "By the way, why are you looking for me?" "Oh, I just want to see if you are asleep. If you are not, let's go for a night run." Yi Qianqian looked desperate and said, "Why do we have to go for a night run? Snacks are not good? Korean dramas are not good? Mobile phones are not fun? Why do we have to go for a night run?" Eulili was speechless and turned around, but she was still curious and asked, "You said that your sister married Shen Luo. How is her relationship with Shen Luo?" "How would I know? I am not interested in their life. I am a single dog, so I don't need to pay so much attention to it. Otherwise, I will be abused to tears." Eulili looked at her sympathetically. Suddenly she smirked and asked, "Girl, are you still a virgin?" Yi Qianqian was speechless. "No way, really? How old are you? 26, 27, 28, scram. Hey, you're angry from embarrassment. Tell me, how old are you? However, Lily's response was a loud slam of the door, followed by an earth-shattering cry. Oh my God, there's no justice in this day and age. It's my fault that I'm single. Lily smiled and walked back to the room. Yi Qianqian lay on the bed for a long time. She scratched her head and picked up her cell phone to call Yi Yu. The phone rang for a long time before Yi Yu picked it up. It sounded like she was sleeping. Hello. Yi Yu turned on the light to clear her head. Yi Qianqian's voice sounded a little strange. She asked, "How is your relationship with Shin Luoan?" When Yi Yu heard the question, she perked up. Sitting up from the bed, Yi Yu asked, "You never care about the things between me and brother Luoan. Why do you ask this now?" Chapter 969. Yes, that girl seems to be very interested in the relationship between you and Shin Luoan, Yi Qianqian said. Yi Yu heard the excitement in her words and exposed her disdainfully. You are curious yourself. Why do you push it to others? Yi Qianqian smiled and said, half and half. Tell me quickly. I don't know if it's good or not. Since we got married, he has never slept with me. Yi Qianqian was shocked and exclaimed, no way. Yi Yu nodded and felt frustrated. Besides, he has never hugged me or kissed me. Every time I go back, he just looks at me and asks, you're back? Then he has nothing to say. Oh my God. How can you not have feelings? You have no feelings at all. Yi Qianqian exclaimed. How can you tolerate it? Otherwise, he always tells me that he is not ready and asks me to wait. Yi Yu's voice was already crying. Sister, you also think it's abnormal, right? Nonsense. It's so abnormal. Yi Qianqian gave her a big supercilious look and said, it's lucky that you didn't lose your temper. If it were me, I might have slept with him that night. What does it mean to let you live like a widow? While speaking, it seemed that she thought of something and said, is it because of the old woman of the Shin family? That old woman told him not to touch you? Not to sleep with you? Yi Yu paused and also felt that it was very possible. The more Yi Qianqian thought about it, the more confused she became. She scolded, damn it, that old woman. She thinks she is an eminent monk and goes around telling people's fortunes. I think Brother Luo and doesn't like you at all. He just uses the old woman's power to force you to divorce. However, after Yi Qianqian said this, she noticed that something was wrong. Hearing the silence on the other side, Yi Qianqian quickly explained and said, no, I said something wrong. You don't think too much. Sister. Yi interrupted Yi Qianqian's words. I know that Brother Luoan doesn't like me, but he doesn't like anyone else, right? As long as I can be with him, I will be satisfied. When her voice fell, the phone vibrated. She picked it up and saw that it was a call from Li Jinnan. When Yi Qianqian heard what Yi said, she sighed and said, you silly girl. Why aren't you sleeping? It's already past 11. Get ready. Sleep early, good night. Good night. Yi hung up on Yi Qianqian and answered Li Jinnan's call. GM Li, do you still want your wedding ring? Li Jinnan's voice sounded nonchalant. She could even imagine his nonchalant expression. It was as if he didn't care about anything. Of course. Come and get it yourself. Come to my office tomorrow. With that, he hung up the phone. Yi didn't have time to say anything. Naturally, she didn't have time to reject him either. Looking at the phone, Yi thought about what Yi Qianqian had just said. Her emotions were complicated. By the time Yi arrived at the NC headquarters, it was already past 10 a.m. Chapter 970. Yi sat inside and played with her phone. After a few minutes, she heard something outside. Li Jinnan's voice came through the door. At the same time, there was a familiar voice. Yi's body stiffened. She stood inside and looked outside. Li Jinnan was wearing a straight and beautiful long windbreaker. He wore a thin white shirt inside, which showed off his healthy and strong body. And Li Jinnan had a characteristic. He didn't wear a suit like many people. Relatively speaking, he dressed much more casually than many people. But he was very handsome. Perhaps because he had been in the army, Li Jinan gave people an indescribable sharpness at first glance. But if you looked closely, you would find that the sharpness had been restrained. When you looked again, it was like the clouds and the wind, and his eyes were as clear as the moon. Just behind Li Jinan a man walked up as well. He was wearing a black coat, a dark gray scarf, dark gray trousers and pitch black leather shoes. He was slightly shorter than Li Jinan, but he was still very tall. His facial features were clear, and his eyes were like stars. He didn't smile, but he was naturally charming. It's him. It was the man that Yi Yu had loved for 10 years, Shen Luoan. Shen Luoan sat opposite Li Jinan, and the secretary quickly came in with coffee. Yi Yu had mixed feelings. Seeing Shen Luoan there, she inexplicably didn't dare to go out. Why? Even Yi Yu didn't know. She turned back to the sofa, and her heart was in a mess. Hearing the two men talking outside, Yi Yu felt a little strange. One was her husband whom she loved deeply, and the other was her boss whom she had a one-night stand with. And she was hiding in her boss's office, not daring to go out. What is this situation? Yi Yu looked in the mirror in front of her. The delicate makeup on her face made her already beautiful features even more beautiful. But I am so beautiful. Why doesn't Shen Luoan feel anything for me? Mr. Shen, I seem to have heard some rumors recently. It seems that you are married? Li Jinan looked indifferent. He looked at Shen Luoan in front of him, and asked casually, as he drank his coffee with a smile. When Shen Luoan heard this, he smiled faintly and asked, "Who told you that?" "I forgot about that. After all, once the news comes out, everyone will hear it. Towards the end, it will become more and more distorted." Shen Luoan's smile widened as he said, "No. No." Li Jinan gently put his hand into his coat pocket. His long fingers gently rubbed the ring lying in the pocket. His eyes fell on Shen Luoan's hand. Shen Luoan's hands were unadorned. As if sensing Li Jinan's gaze, Shen Luoan extended his hand and waved it as he said, "I'm not married." Li Jinan had a look of understanding on his face. He nodded his head and said, "So that's how it is. It looks like the rumors out there can't be trusted after all." "Of course." Shen Luoan took a sip of coffee and smiled. When Yi Yu heard Shen Luoan's reply, she still felt very disappointed, even though it was within her expectations. Yi Yu didn't listen to what they said next. She clutched her arms and shrank into a ball in the lounge. She didn't dare go out. Chapter 971. Did you hear all that? Li Jinan put his hands in his pockets and said, "He said he's not married." Yi Yu held her hands together and bit her lower lip. She had mixed feelings. Yes, he's not married. In Shen Luoan's heart, maybe marriage is just a process. Why should I care so much? I don't care. As long as I can be with him, it's okay. It doesn't matter whether there is love or not. The word marriage has tied the two of them together. Unless she was willing, they would never be able to separate. The initiative is in my hands, isn't it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Li Jinan noticed the change in her mood. His eyes were as deep as water. He slowly said, "He said he doesn't have a lover." Those few words easily reminded her of what he had said to her when she had threatened to kill herself to force him to marry her. He had said, "Yi Yu, I can marry you, but I won't love you. I can't love you anymore. I can't love anymore." Because of her threat, he could marry her, but he wouldn't love her. At that time, she didn't think it mattered. But she ignored the most terrible human nature, greed. Now that she was married to him, she wanted more and more. Yi Yu glared at him, stood up abruptly and ran out. Her eyes couldn't stop burning. Yi Yu bit her lower lip and pressed the elevator button to go downstairs. Li Jinan looked at her back and looked down at the wedding ring on his finger. He felt a little helpless. Didn't she come to get the ring? Now she hasn't even gotten the ring, and she's already running away? After Yi Yu got out of the elevator, she ran out of the door and could see Shen Luoan's back from a distance. It was so familiar, so straight. Yi Yu stopped. Shen Luoan didn't notice that Yi Yu was behind him. He was looking down at the news that had just been pushed out on his phone. Everyone is happy. The daughter of the Shen family announces the good news of her marriage with Oming. It will be before the new year. Shen Luoan looked at the news, smiled gently, and muttered to himself, "Can't wait? Or is it just to warn me?" Yi Yi watched Shen Luoan walk away. Her feet seemed to be nailed and she couldn't move. Not far away from them, there was a big screen in front of them that was scrolling through the news. And the most eye-catching news was the big news about the marriage between the young master of the O clan and the young master of the Shun clan. So Enchanting is getting married? Yi Yi felt a sense of relief. Happiness crept onto her face. When Lily saw this message, her hands that were typing suddenly stopped. Looking at the 10-cent news push in the lower right corner, Lily moved the mouse and clicked on the news. There were only pictures of Ming and a selfie of Enchanting. That's great, they're getting married. On the 23rd of the 12th month, they could celebrate the new year right after they got married. Lily's mood was indescribably gloomy. They had already broken up, so why did she still care so much? Lily closed the web page and was about to continue working when the new receptionist outside shouted, Lily, someone is looking for you." Lily looked up but didn't see who it was. He stood up and walked outside. However, the first thing he saw wasn't a person, but a huge bouquet of pink roses. Seeing the roses, Lily was a little surprised. Chapter 972. Shinjulia's facial features were very good-looking and well-defined. At first glance, he was a bit deep. When Lily saw him, she frowned, then turned around and walked inside. Shinjulia immediately greeted her and shouted, Lily, this is for you." However, Lily's pace quickened as she ran further inside. Shinjulia immediately followed her and shouted, "Lily, don't be so cruel. Give me a chance." Her colleagues all looked over with a bit of ambiguity and ridicule in their eyes. When Lily met his gaze, she became even more impatient. She turned around and shouted, "Are you done yet? Are you done?" Shinjulia took the opportunity to put the roses in her arms and said with a smile, "Look, it's over." Enchanting was pouring water. When she heard the movement here, she came in with a glass of water and said with envy, "Wow, what a beautiful flower. Lily, is this your boyfriend? He is so handsome." Shinjulia was actually very proud of being praised in such a way. However, in front of Lily, he still had to pretend to be a little reserved. Looking at Enchanting, Shinjulia smiled and said, "You flatter me." Lily put the roses back, looked at Enchanting and said, "This is not my boyfriend." Then she quickly walked back inside. Shinjulia almost dropped the roses, but he quickly caught them and held them in his arms. He walked in and said, "My good Lily, don't be angry. Let's go to dinner together later." Many people turned to look at him enviously, especially Shanyu. Shanyu wore thick black-rimmed glasses, and her clothes were very ordinary and affordable sportswear. She was a little fat. She looked a little rustic, but she had just graduated from college and was 2 years younger than Lily. At this moment, she looked at Shinjulia and couldn't move her eyes away. Lily noticed Shanyu's gaze and turned to glare at Shinjulia. She said, "This is an office area. Please don't disturb other people's work here, okay?" Many people looked at Shinjulia with sympathy. Shinjulia touched his nose and said, "You mean that you promised me to have dinner with you later? All right, I'll wait for you outside first." Without giving Lily a chance to refuse, Shinjulia put down the roses and turned to leave. Lily looked at the roses with disgust and threw them into the trash can. Shanyu looked at the bouquet of roses and felt that it was a pity. The tender and alluring petals were very fresh and beautiful. Lily didn't notice Shanyu's gaze, but Enchanting did. Enchanting noticed Shanyu's gaze. She pretended to hold the coffee, walked to Lily's seat, and said, "Is this really your boyfriend? Wow, Lily really hides her strength. She didn't bring such a handsome man out to meet her sisters. That's not good enough. I told you he's not my boyfriend." Lily felt a little helpless. She looked up at her and said, "This guy is the one who caused me to break up with my boyfriend. She's AB*TCH. Chapter 973. Lily glanced at her, picked up the flowers, and handed them to Enchanting. "Here." Enchanting held the flowers and smelled them. "They smell so good." She looked at Shanyu and said, Why don't we share them together? Shan Yu looked at the bunch of flowers, but she quickly looked away. She pouted her lips with disdain and said, I'm not that cheap. Why should we share what others don't want? The expression on Yi Qianqian's face suddenly froze. Many people heard Shan Yu's words. Suddenly, there seemed to be an unspeakable awkwardness in the air. When Yu Lily heard this, she felt a little inexplicable. But she was angry and looked at Shan Yu. However, Shan Yu didn't realize what she had done wrong at all. Facing everyone's eyes, she looked puzzled and asked, Did I say something wrong? Yi Qianqian smiled and looked at the roses in her hand. She didn't know whether to put them down or take them. Yu Lily took the flowers and said, Such a big thing. Why don't we each have one? It's very fresh. Yu Lily took the flowers out and gave one to each of her colleagues. There were still a dozen left. Yu Lily found a bottle and put it in front of her. Look, I still have the most. Qianqian, come here. I'll give you a few more. Yi Qianqian looked at Yu Lily gratefully, took it and said, Thank you, Lily. Many people could see that Yi Qianqian thanked Yu Lily not for the flowers, but for helping her out. Shan Yu, on the other hand, was much more straightforward. She put the roses on the keyboard. Seeing Yu Lily's behavior, she muttered, Hypocrite. Yu Lily was angry. She slammed the table and stood up. Everyone was taken aback by Yu Lily's imposing manner, but Yi Qianqian managed to calm them down. Yi Qianqian laughed and said, Time's up. Let's eat. Lily, I suddenly want to eat the fat cow across the street. Let's go together? Yu Lily was furious and annoyed. She turned to look at Yi Qianqian, only to see her winking at her. Yi Qianqian kept winking at her. She pulled Yu Lily up and said, Let's go. As soon as they were out, Yu Lily yelled out, Is that woman sick? She's retarded. There's something wrong with her brain. Shen Jilya heard Yu Lily's voice from afar. He rushed over and asked, What's going on? What's wrong? When Yu Lily saw Shen Jilya, she felt even angrier. She roared, Why are you here? Are you so free? Don't you need to go to work? Aren't you a psychologist? Is it fun to dress up like this all day to pick up girls? Are you crazy? Shen Jilya was dumbfounded by the yelling. He looked at Yi Qianqian with a confused expression. Yi Qianqian pulled Yu Lily back, smiled apologetically, and said, It's okay. She was just angry. It's not a big deal. After venting, Yu Lily was in a much better mood. However, seeing Shen Jilya still annoyed her. She pulled Yi Qianqian along and walked out of the office. Shen Jilya immediately caught up and gestured to Yi Qianqian. What's going on? She shrugged her shoulders, shook her head, and sighed with an indescribable expression. Chapter 974. Yi Qianqian immediately followed Shen Jilya and Yu Lily to the stone pot beef shop that they had mentioned earlier. Shan Yu looked at the backs of Yi Qianqian and Yu Lily, feeling very unconvinced. Shan Yu is Yi Qianqian's assistant. Why is Yu Lily, Ziyu's assistant, so close to Yi Qianqian? Now Yi Qianqian is the queen of performance in the company, and a large part of the company's traffic is brought back by Yi Qianqian. But Shan Yu didn't learn anything from her. It must be because Yi Qianqian taught Yu Lily all the time. Even Editor-in-Chief Zhou said that the next candidate for the position of editor was more inclined to Yu Lily. And last time I accidentally saw Yu Lily's computer. It seems that there is a relationship between her and Yi Qianqian, right? There was jealousy in Shan Yu's eyes. When she thought of how Yu Lily almost jumped up and beat her, she felt angry. Why? Why can Yu Lily get in through the back door? I'll get rid of you sooner or later. Shen Jilya followed Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian into a restaurant and sat down. His incongruous style made Shen Jilya attract a lot of attention. Feeling the eyes of the girls around him, Shen Jilya smiled to show his politeness. When Yu Lily saw it, she sneered and said, If you can laugh so much, why are you a psychiatrist? Go sell your laughter. Shen Jilya asked, Did you eat dynamite today? Yi Qianqian looked at Shen Jilya with her eyes shining and said, So you are a psychiatrist? Shen Jilya was a little proud to receive the admiration of a girl. He smiled coquettishly. Shen Jilya nodded and said, Yes, now I work while going to school. Wow, that's amazing. Yi Qianqian looked at him with eyes full of admiration and said, Do you know hypnosis? I heard that not all psychiatrists can hypnotize people. It seems that the ability of hypnosis is also divided into different levels, right? Shenjilia nodded and said, yes, because everyone's understanding, realm, and spiritual level are different. Eulili watched him enter the bragging mode with her own eyes. But she didn't interrupt him. She silently drank her tea. And after ordering the food, she handed it to Yi Qianqian and said, order as much as you can. He'll pay the bill. Yi Qianqian looked at the price list, and then at the pink suit Shenjilia was wearing. Come on. How much money could there be in this kind of place, even if they tried their best? Moreover, she didn't fit in with this young master, who looked like a rich man at first glance. Yi Qianqian circled one, and handed the menu back to Shenjilia. After ordering, Shenjilia continued to brag. Yi Qianqian listened attentively, and was stunned by his professional knowledge. After they finished eating, Yi Qianqian was reluctant to leave. Her eyes sparkled as she listened to Shenjilia recount all the case studies. She quickly parted ways with Shenjilia. His voice was still echoing in her head. She looked at Eulili and said, Lily, I think I can study psychology too. It's so interesting. Eulili laughed out loud and gave her a push. After working the entire afternoon, Yi Qianqian didn't ride her bike to her destination after work. Instead, he walked back home after arguing with Eulili. When she got home, it was 6:30, and it was already dark. Chapter 975. The man was meticulously dressed. His burgundy suit had been carefully ironed, and it was very neat and clean. At that moment, he leaned against the Bentley with a cigarette between his long fingers. When he saw them coming, he put out the cigarette by the trash can not far away, and stood up straight. It was Oming. When Eulili saw him, the smile on her face disappeared. When Yi Qianqian saw Oming, she recognized him at a glance. Seeing him, Yi Qianqian felt a little strange. I can't believe I see such a person at the entrance of my own community. But what is this guy doing here? Yi Qianqian turned to look at Eulili, with a face full of gossip. When she was about to speak, she found that Eulili was also looking at Oming with a solemn face. Yi Qianqian suddenly had a bad guess and said, could it be? Eulili looked at Yi Qianqian and said, you go up first. I have something to do. Yi Qianqian was stunned and couldn't believe it. It was amazing that she knew Li Jinnan and a psychiatrist, but Eulili actually knew Oming. Oh my god, is there a need to live? And from the looks of it, her relationship with Oming isn't ordinary. This Eulili has too many secrets on her. When Yi Qianqian heard Eulili's words, she looked at Eulili, and then looked at Oming and said weakly, then I'll go up first. Okay. Yi Qianqian led her little donkey into the community. She looked back every few steps, but Eulili was not in a hurry to walk in Oming's direction. This is really making Yi Qianqian anxious. Eulili looked at Oming in front of her and smiled. She walked forward and said, congratulations, you're getting married soon. Oming saw her smile, but he didn't feel happy at all. He couldn't help but reach out his hand. He looked at her and said, Eulili. Yes. Eulili looked at Oming and slightly raised her eyebrows. What's wrong? Oming looked at her, pulled her into his arms and said, I won't marry her. Give me a little more time, and I will marry you openly and let you be my wife. Eulili slightly raised her face and leaned on his shoulder. His heart felt as though it was being twisted, and it was aching. But on the surface he smiled and said, Oming. His voice was calm with a gentle smile. However, this kind of voice made Oming feel even more uncomfortable than hearing her roar. Oming held her in his arms, unwilling to let go. She gently pushed him away, but to no avail. She placed her hands on his chest and said, I'm scared. Do you know that? Oming's heart tightened, and he held her more tightly. Eulili simply gave up. Her eyes were burning, and her vision was blurred. Eulili could clearly feel his temperature and breath, but she felt that there was a very, very long ravine between them, deep and dark. As long as she moved forward a little bit, she would fall into it and be smashed into pieces, leaving nothing behind. I'm afraid of your empty promises. Eulili's tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. I don't want to be a mistress anymore. And I don't want to live without dignity by your side. Do you remember that night? Chapter 976. When Lily heard that, she chuckled and said, "There is nothing to apologize for. Oh Ming, you should be glad that I didn't succeed in committing suicide. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." "It's impossible." Oh Ming looked at her, and his throat tightened. "I can't let you die." Lily shook her head, gently pushed his hands away and said, "That's it. Let's part on good terms, okay? You have your wife, and I will find a man who loves and dotes on me in the future. I don't have to rely on you, Oh Ming." "No." Oh Ming suddenly panicked. In the face of such a Lily, Oh Ming was at a loss. "No, Lily. Why not?" Lily smiled, and there was some pity in her eyes. She looked at Oh Ming in front of her, as if she was looking at an ignorant child. Soon she looked away, turned around and said, "No one can't live without someone else." As she spoke, she had already walked toward the gate of the community. However, Oh Ming reacted quickly and pulled her back, shouting, "I can't." Oh Ming's words made Lily stop. Oh Ming stood behind her, looking at her back. His voice was a little empty, hoarse, and with a little bit of imperceptible fear. He said, "I can't, Lily. Without you I can't live." When Lily heard that, she laughed out loud. She turned her head and looked at Oh Ming. The compassion in her eyes deepened. She smiled brightly at Oh Ming, as if she was the most brilliant sunflower following the sun, quietly blooming without a sound. "Don't deceive yourself, Oh Ming." Lily looked at him and said word by word, "You are different from me. You can survive without anyone. It's just that without someone different, you will have a different kind of fun." From the beginning, Lily knew very clearly what her identity was, and what kind of identity she should use to exist in front of him. She could provide him for fun, for him to vent his desires, for him to play, but not for him to live, because the only thing that allowed him to live had always been himself. He was just a clown. No one should take him seriously. In his world, Lily was just playing the role of a clown. She could have remained at his side as long as she wished, as a perceptive mistress, as a clown who knew how to please him. It was just like how the children in the orphanage scolded her when she was young. If she continued to pretend, she would be able to get candy. But she didn't want to, not anymore. It was not interesting at all. When Oh Ming saw her smile, he silently tightened his grip on her hand and said, "Wait for me, okay? Wait for me for 2 months. In 2 months, I will solve the current problem. When that time comes, marry me." "Oh Ming." Lily took his hand away and said, "Go back. Your fiancé needs you more than I do." She shook him off and quickly walked back inside. With her back to Oh Ming, her tears fell quietly. Oh Ming looked at her back and felt a little frustrated. Back in the car, Oh Ming took out his phone. She found Shen Luo's number and dialed it. When Lily came back, her eyes were red. Chapter 977. When Lily saw her, she smiled reluctantly and said, "I know what you want to ask. He is my boyfriend." Yi Qianqian was stunned and couldn't believe it. She blurted out, "Isn't he getting married?" Lily smiled reluctantly and nodded. "Yes, he is, but his partner is Shen Manting, Shen Luoan's sister, the daughter of the Shen family." Compared with Shen Manting, her identity and background were worlds apart. Lily looked at Yi Qianqian, and her eyes became redder. She frowned, but she was still smiling. However, this smile was even uglier than when she was crying, and it was even more unbearable. Yi Qianqian looked at her, and swallowed all the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She reached out and gently patted her on the back. "What's wrong, Lily? Cry if you are sad. It's better than holding it in your heart." Lily's eyes became redder, and tears quickly gathered in her eyes. But soon she wiped her tears and smiled brightly. "What do you want to eat? I'll cook." Seeing Lily like this, Yi Qianqian pouted and felt a little uncomfortable. She said, "Lily, don't be like this. You make me want to cry." Lily patted her, but she couldn't smile. Her throat was choked, and all the tears fell. Yi Qianqian looked at her like this, suddenly opened her mouth and cried out, "Lily, if you want to cry, just cry. Why are you like this?" "I can't help it." Seeing her like this, Yu Lily smiled and pushed her to the sofa. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. You are so useless. Yi Qianqian wiped her tears and said, Don't cry. What do you want to eat? I'll cook for you. I'll cook for you. Is the food you cook edible? Yu Lily wiped her face and looked disgusted. She turned and walked toward the kitchen and said, Let's eat my best dishes. Okay. Yi Qianqian was just saying. How could she cook? If she was asked to cook, she would probably blow up the kitchen in minutes. Yu Lily smiled and turned to take out the ingredients she bought during the morning run in the fridge. Her best dishes were all Oming's favorites. For the rest of the time, she was almost like a zombie. Yu Lily worked during the day and painted at night. On weekends, she quarreled with Yi Qianqian and went shopping. The day seemed very ordinary. However, Oming was not so relaxed. In the private drug research institute, there was finally a breakthrough. The scientist in charge immediately reported the good news to Oming, who was pleasantly surprised. Half a month passed and the weather was getting colder. Yu Lily went to buy a new set of winter clothes. When it was the winter solstice, she made glutinous rice balls with Yi Qianqian. When Yi Qianqian called Yi Yuyu to come along, Yi Yuyu was already in the capital. The winter solstice was a time for family reunion. As a newly married woman, it was only natural for her to return to the Shun family. However, when she arrived at the airport, Shun Luoan, who was supposed to pick her up, didn't show up. Instead, Shun Jilia came to pick her up. Yi Yi was a little disappointed, but it was within her expectations. Chapter 978. A large basin of water splashed out. Shun Jilia instinctively took a step back and pulled Yi Yu back. Yi Yu looked on helplessly as the water brushed past her. She was still in a state of shock. Looking at the door, old Mrs. Shun was holding a basin of water. She was disappointed to see that the water didn't splash on Yi Yu. When Shun Jilia saw old Mrs. Shun, he shouted angrily, Grandma, didn't you see that we're back? Why did you splash water? Children don't understand. You have to pour all the bad luck away. If the bad luck enters the door, it won't be so easy to get rid of it. Old Mrs. Shun said seriously, but her eyes were fixed on Yi Yu. Shun Jilia was not stupid. He immediately knew who old Mrs. Shun was talking about. He turned his head to look at Yi Yu and said, Sister-in-law, don't get me wrong. Grandma is talking about you. But these words are too hurtful. Shun Jilia was embarrassed to say it. But he saw Yi Yu smile and echo the old lady. Yes, it's better to go. Her expression and look were as if she didn't know that the old lady was scolding her for bad luck. When old Mrs. Shun saw this, she sneered, turned around and walked in. She said lazily, Bad luck is like a bitch. Whether you care about it or not, it still exists. It's really annoying. Shun Jilia was even more embarrassed. He looked at Yi Yu and said, Sister-in-law. Yi Yu still looked the same. She nodded and said with a smile, I think Grandma is right. Let's go in. When Shun Jilia saw Yi Yu's expression, he felt that Grandma was a little too much. However, even Yi Yu didn't lose her temper. Shun Jilia couldn't say anything. He helped Yi Yu carry the suitcase and walked inside. After Yi Yu walked in, she took the suitcase from Shun Jilia's hand and took it to Shun Luoan's room. When she entered, Shun Luoan was sleeping inside. Perhaps he heard the noise and opened his eyes. A pair of sleepy, hazy eyes looked over with an extremely sharp expression. When Yi Yu met his gaze, she froze on the spot. Shun Luoan glanced at the suitcase in her hand and looked at her left ring finger. He curled his lips and asked, Do you like this room very much? Yi Yu opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, she heard Shun Luoan say, I'll give it to you. While speaking, Shun Luoan had already got up, put on his shoes and stood up. Just as he was about to walk away, Yi Yu grabbed his hand. He stopped in his tracks and turned his head to look at her. Yi Yu's eyes flickered with sadness. Brother Luoan, we are husband and wife. Shun heard this sentence and smiled. He held her hand and gently pushed it and said, Luoan, I said. Yu. Jilia. Shun looked at her. Shun Luoan reached out and patted the back of her hand. He said softly, You've already obtained the identity of Mrs. Shun. I've already married you. What else do you want? Although Shen Luo and was smiling when he said this, his eyes were cold. The coldness pierced deeply into Yi Yu's heart. Chapter 979. Yi Yu's breathing was disordered. She looked at Shen Luoan, and her heart was indescribably empty. Something seemed to be fermenting quickly, but when Yi Yu tried to catch it, it disappeared without a trace. Shen Luoan had a smile on his face. He let go of her hand, gently pushed her away, and walked out of the room. The door was closed, and there was a slight sound. The spring that had been tightly gripped in her heart suddenly started to spin. Sorrow slowly and recklessly overflowed. What she wanted was not just this, however. There was no going back. Everything could not go back. The phone in her pocket vibrated slightly. Yi Yu listened to the ringtone of the phone and stood in the same place without moving. Li Jinnan, who was far away in Kingstown, held the phone that was ringing and felt a little impatient. He had called more than a dozen times in a row, but there was no response at all. Really? What the hell? What was even more strange was that Li Jinnan actually had the patience to make this phone call. Li Jinnan was a little annoyed, took out a cigarette, lit it and took a long breath. Little uncle, a tender voice came in, with the unique sweetness of a little girl. Li Jianyue ran into Li Jinnan's room and shouted, "Little uncle, Mom and Dad asked you to go outside." Li Jinnan saw the lively little girl, put the phone in his pocket, stood up and picked Li Jianyue up and said, "Ursu, have you eaten glutinous rice balls?" "Yes." Li Jianyue was very happy. She hugged Li Jinnan's neck and said, "Are we going to the hospital to see great-grandpa? When can great-grandpa come back?" Li Jinnan touched the little girl's nose and said, "Soon. When great-grandpa's illness is cured, he can go home." "Then when will great-grandpa's illness be cured?" Li Jianyue looked at Li Jinnan and was a little puzzled. Mom said that great-grandpa's illness is a heart disease, but this heart disease is not a heart disease. What is it? Is it a heart disease? Li Jinnan carried Li Jianyue and walked out. He patiently explained, "No, a heart disease is a disease of the mood, not a disease of the heart. For example, Ursu has a favorite toy today, but she accidentally lost it and can't find it. Will Ursu be unhappy?" "That's right." Li Jianyue nodded. "This is called mental illness." Li Jianyue tilted her head and thought about it. She said, "Then did great-grandfather lose his toy?" Li Jinnan smiled. As he spoke, he had already carried Ursu outside. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi stood together like a pair of lovers, looking at each other and smiling. They had both a son and a daughter. How blissful! Li Jinnan was a little envious. He reached out to touch Li Mosen's head and said, "Where is Daesu?" Li Mosen looked up at Li Jinnan and said, "Daesu went to the hospital with Grandpa and Grandma to accompany great-grandpa. Now they are waiting for us to go together and accompany Grandpa for the winter solstice." Although Li Mosen was young, his narration was already well organized. His little brain was very smart. Su Qianxi held his hand and said, "Let's go. Great-grandfather is waiting for us." The family got into the nanny van, and the driver Xiaoyang drove. Chapter 980. In particular, he had shot Tang Minjing with his own hands. This was the biggest stone in the old man's heart. There was almost no one left in the Tang family. Although this generation of the Tang family was not on good terms with the Li family, Captain Li had always been a man of his word. He had promised the Tang brothers that he would protect the Tang family, but in the end, when they arrived at the hospital, the whole family had changed their faces, and their faces were full of joy for the festival. Compared to before, the old man had aged a lot. His hair, which was originally gray, was almost completely white, and the wrinkles on his face had deepened and lengthened. His aged face looked even more benevolent than before. Captain Li knew his situation. He looked at his grandchildren and great-grandchildren happily, and his face was full of satisfaction. Li Jianyue, Li Jianxian, and Li Mosen were all in the ward, eating glutinous rice balls with small spoons, talking in childish voices and laughing full of energy. Li Beixing, Li Xiqing, and Li Jinan were all there, as well as the Li Xiao and Li Sheng families. They all celebrated the festival with Captain Li Sun. Although the venue was in the hospital, The winter solstice was still very lively. Captain Li's smile grew wider. He waved at Li Jinnan and Li Beixing and shouted, "Jinnan, Beixing, come here." Li Jinnan sat next to Captain Li. Captain Li reached out and put his hand on Li Jinnan's shoulder. He turned his head, looked at Li Beixing and said, "You are all good children. Even when you are busy, remember to find a wife. I am dying. If I can see you bring a wife back to see me before I die, I will be satisfied even if I die." "Grandpa, don't say that." Li Jinnan's heart ached. He took the old and withered hand of Captain Li. "Get better soon. I am waiting for you to arrange a wife for me." Li Beixing nodded in agreement and said, "Me too. Look, the wife you got for my second son is so good. Ah, sister-in-law is simply the best woman I've ever seen. When you get better, remember to introduce me to one as well. I want to be even more blessed than my second son." Li Beixing nodded in agreement. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi looked ahead and did not speak. Captain Li said with a smile, "I know my own body. You don't have to coax me. Finding a wife is the most important thing." Hearing such a topic, Li Mosen jumped out of the chair and said, "Grandpa, I will also find a wife in the future. When I have children, I will ask Grandpa to name my son and daughter." Everyone heard this and couldn't help laughing. Li Jianqian also ran down and said, "Yes, I heard that my name and Ursa's name were both given by great-grandfather." The children all said that it was very nice. The old man waved at them with a smile and said, "Good, good, good. Then you have to grow up quickly and find a wife. When the time comes, great-grandfather will give your children names, okay?" Li Jianyue held the small bowl and skipped over. In a soft voice she shouted, "Great-grandpa, I want one too." The few children surrounded him and spoke one after another. The old man happily responded to them one by one, but it made the eyes of the people behind him turn red. Su Qianxi's heart ached. Holding his arm, her eyes became red. Chapter 981. The old man's mental state was not very good, and he soon became sleepy. After lying down, Li Xiao and his wife first sent all the children back, while Li Xiqing and his brothers continued to stay in the hospital to accompany the old man. Li Jinnan was accompanying his grandfather in the hospital. Suddenly his cell phone rang, and he immediately turned to look. But when he saw that it was a call from the company, he was a little disappointed. After solving the company's affairs, Li Jinnan dialed the phone number again. This time, Yi still didn't answer the phone. The phone was placed in the room, and it was muted. Yi helped to cook outside, listening to the conversation between old Mrs. Shun and other family members outside. From the small things at home to those fun things, they didn't mention her at all. Yi was a little disappointed. After helping the nanny to prepare the dishes, she took them out and shouted, "Mom, Dad, Grandma, Uncle, Aunt and Brother Luoan, it's time to eat." After that, she turned around and went back to the kitchen to put the dumplings into the pot one by one. When the family was at the table, Mrs. Shun coughed softly and said, "Is there one person missing?" Shun Jilia looked at the crowd, and finally moved Shin Luoan and said, "Brother, sister-in-law hasn't come yet." Shin Luoan seemed to suddenly understand and shouted, Yu, let's eat." When Yu heard this shout, she was immediately overjoyed. She turned her head and answered, "Yes, I'm coming." However, she didn't dare to go just like that. After Yu cooked the dumplings, she scooped them up, put them on the table, and sat down next to Shin Luoan. After all the dumplings were divided and placed in front of each of them, Yu began to eat with chopsticks. Old Mrs. Shun didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. She picked up the chopsticks and began to eat. Mrs. Shun looked at Yu and said, "Yu, don't work too hard. Remember to take care of your body, so that you can have a good baby. If you can, it's better for you to quit your job and be a full-time wife at home. Luoan is busy with work, so you can help him." A smile appeared on Yuyu's face. Just as she was about to speak, she heard Shin Luoan say, "What's the rush?" While eating the dumplings, Shin Luoan said, "If she wants to have a child, she can do so at any time. She's still so young. Let her work hard. Otherwise, she won't be able to go out to work after giving birth." The smile on Yuyu's face froze. With a dry laugh she replied, "Yeah, I think so too." Mrs. Shun looked at Shen Luo reproachfully and said, "Yu is young, but you're already 28 years old. Look at the children of your age. Which one of them isn't married and has children? You're the eldest brother. You should set an example for Julia." When Shen Julia heard that, he lowered his head and ate his food in silence. He didn't say anything in case he became the target of a mob. Suddenly he saw a piece of chicken wing. He stretched out his chopsticks and picked it up for Enchanting, who had been sitting quietly at the side. He said, "Eat more." Enchanting was stunned. She noticed that Yu was looking at her. She lowered her head guiltily and said, "Thank you, brother." Shen Luoan didn't care and continued to eat. Chapter 982. When old Mrs. Shin saw this, she snorted with dissatisfaction and said, "Some people don't eat if they don't want to eat. They eat slowly and are in a daze. How much do they not want to go back to this family?" Yi Yu's expression changed and she said, "Grandma, I didn't. Did I say it was you?" Old Mrs. Shin laughed and said, "Why do you have to take it personally? You're being too honest." Yi Yu didn't say anything and continued to eat. In this family, she shouldn't talk too much. The more she said, the more mistakes she would make. After dinner, Yi Yu sat aside and waited for the family to finish eating, so that she could help clean up the dishes. However, when Yi Yu was ready to do it, her hand was held. Shen Luoan stood aside and took her hand. He squinted and said lazily, "We don't lack a nanny in our family. Just do your job well." "Brother Luoan." "Don't call me that. I'm your husband." Shen Luoan's voice was not low, and the dining room was close to the living room, so the people in the living room could hear it clearly. Enchanting and Shen Julia were happy to hear it. One was happy that Shen Luo and was likely to fall in love with Yi Yu, and the other was happy that Yi Yu had finally made it. However, old Mrs. Shun was not so happy. She sat on the sofa and said, "What's so good about this woman? She looks so attractive. She's not a member of our family. She's destined to be separated. It's better not to agree to marry her in the first place. She's a fickle woman. It's also the fate of a second marriage. What a sin." At such a distance, old Mrs. Shun's words could easily be heard by Yi Yu. Mrs. Shun felt that something was wrong and said, "Mom, Yu is listening." Old Mrs. Shun said confidently, "So what? I'm not afraid of her. As for you, I didn't agree to marry this woman, but you insisted. You framed Shen Luo, and because he is not your son, right?" Mrs. Shen was even more embarrassed and speechless for a while. She only gave birth to Shen Julia, and Shen Luoan's mother had already gone crazy after giving birth to Shen Luoan. When she was pregnant with the second child, she was lost outside, and Enchanting was called back later. Mrs. Shun was considered a descendant of a prestigious family. It was not very honorable to be a concubine for someone else. Now that old Mrs. Shun had brought it up, she felt a little awkward. Enchanting and Shen Julia looked at each other and didn't respond. When Yi Yu heard the conversation from afar, she began to take notice of it. In this family, Mama Shun was the person who treated her the best. But because of her, old Madam Shun had said such things. Everyone said that she might not be very smart. But sometimes the words that the old lady said were so accurate and direct. Was such an old lady really not smart? Yi Yu had her suspicions, but she was secretly delighted to be pulled along by him. Shen Luo pulled her into the room and said, "Stay here. Don't take Grandma's words to heart." Was he concerned about her? Yi Yu felt a sweetness in her heart. She nodded her head and replied, "Okay." The corners of Shen Luo's mouth twitched when he saw her expression. He let go of her hand and walked out. Chapter 983. What? Shen Luo turned his head and looked at her. "You changed your mind quickly." Being teased, Yi Yu blushed a little and said, "What are you going to do? Sleep in the study?" Shen Luo's face didn't change, as if he was talking about something normal. Yi Yu's hand holding Shen Luo's sleeve slightly tightened and said, "Aren't we husband and wife? Husband and wife should sleep in the same room." Shen Luo smiled and said, "Yes, but I don't want to." Yi Yu felt even more uncomfortable. She lowered her head and said, Mom also wants us to be together. She is not my mother, nor is she your mother. Why do you listen to her so much? Shen Luoan took her hand away and said, Do you wag your tail at someone who is nice to you? Is he scolding me? Yi Yi raised her eyes and looked at Shen Luoan. Shen Luoan smiled gently and said, I'm kidding. Don't be too sensitive. Go to bed early. After saying that, Shen Luoan went out. Yi Yi was left alone in the room, standing in the same place. The sentence sounded in her mind, I have married you. What else do you want? Really, in addition to the identity of Mrs. Shen, I can't get anything else? Yi Yi stood in the same place and looked at the front where Shen Luo and left with her eyes down. How sad. Shen Manting accompanied the old lady to watch TV in the living room and then returned to the room. However, as soon as she turned on the light, she saw a dark shadow lying on her bed. Shen Manting was scared. After seeing that it was Shen Luoan, she didn't relax at all, and the panic in her heart was even worse. Subconsciously, Shen Manting turned around and turned to open the door to go out. However, before she opened the door, she had been dragged by Shen Luo and then thrown onto the bed. Shen Manting wanted to scream, but her mouth was covered. Shen Luoan's face was a little gloomy. Looking at her pair of extremely panicked eyes, there was a kind of indescribable pleasure in his heart. He looked at her and asked, Are you afraid? Shen Manting looked at him in horror, but she shook her head against her will. Shen Luoan smiled and approached and said, Who do you want to warn, huh? Looking at his appearance, Shen Manting's heart was even more frightened. Her heart was beating very fast, and she couldn't control it. Looking at him like this, Shen Manting's heart was even more frightened, and her heart was beating very fast. Shen Luo and narrowed his eyes and pressed Shen Manting's writhing body under him. He caressed her body gently with his big hands and said in a low voice, Tell me, how should I punish you? Shen Manting's mouth was covered, and she was so frightened that her body trembled slightly. She tried hard to shake her head, and there was a pleading look in her eyes. Shen Luoan smiled with satisfaction and said, I'll let you go, but you can't scream. Otherwise you'll be the unlucky one. Shen Manting nodded, and Shen Luoan loosened his grip. Fresh air rushed in, and she gasped for breath. Just as she was about to speak, Shen Luoan pressed her head down and pressed his lips firmly against hers. Shen Manting struggled subconsciously, but Shen Luoan pressed her down even harder. He was extremely strong, and he had never felt the slightest bit of pity for her. Holding her in his arms, Shen Manting almost convulsed in pain. Chapter 984. Shen Luo smiled with satisfaction, and even his movements gradually became gentle. Shen Manting passively accepted his kiss, and the taboo estrangement in her heart grew larger and larger. At this moment, Shen Manting felt that she was simply a pervert. She actually kissed her own brother? Shen Luo saw through her thoughts and found that she was no longer fighting. He was very satisfied and said, That's right. Don't try to refuse me. It won't do you any good. Shen Manting's hands were released. She looked down and found that her hands had been squeezed purple. Shen Manting felt wronged, but she couldn't tell anyone. After all, in this family, she was just an outsider. Shen Luo saw her wronged look, so he pitifully kissed her on the cheek and said, Don't provoke me next time. Otherwise it won't be as simple as today, my sister. Sister? Shen Manting trembled and looked at Shen Luo, and in front of her, as if she was looking at a madman. However, Shen Luo got up, tidied up his clothes, and then walked toward the door. When he went out again, his clothes were neat and tidy. What happened in Shen Manting's room just now, no one found out, and no one saw. In this family, there were always some unspeakable secrets in the dark, waiting for people to uncover. Shen Manting was trembling all over. She took out her mobile phone and called the first person in her mind. However, no one answered. The phone kept ringing in Oming's hand. He leaned against the car door and smoked in annoyance. It was already past 9 o'clock in the evening, and Yu Lily still hadn't come back? He impatiently hung up the phone, picked up the phone, and called Yu Lily. Yu Lily was having a party with her colleagues when the phone rang. After taking a look and seeing that it was Oming, she turned her head and continued to shout, Let's forget the right and wrong, and let's reminisce the past. It's always fun to go through hardships together. Yi Qianqian was shaking dice with other colleagues, waving her hand domineeringly and shouting, come on, 5 2s, who wants to compete? 6 3s, pick. I want to open it. Yi Qianqian roared. After opening all the bottles, she realized that there were only 5 3s. She was overjoyed and shouted, drink. Bottoms up. Eulili saw that they were playing dice so happily, so she immediately threw away the microphone and joined them. However, the phone was still ringing nonstop. Oming got into the car, his mind full of annoyance. When it was almost midnight, he saw a taxi stop. The two women were hugging each other, reeking of alcohol. When they came back drunk, they were still singing. When Oming saw Eulili like that, his face suddenly darkened. His first reaction was to shout, why did you only come back now? Where did you go to play? However, before he could say anything, he swallowed all of his words. When Eulili saw Oming, she laughed and said, Oming, you're here again. Aren't you annoying? I can see you every day. You're like a ghost that won't go away. When Yi Qianqian heard what Eulili said, she fixed her gaze on Eulili. She snorted and yelled, scumbag. You already have a boyfriend, yet you still come to harm my Lily. Bah! Shameless. Chapter 985. Otherwise, Yi Qianqian, who had been scared when she saw him before, wouldn't have the courage to scold him. Unexpectedly, hearing this, Eulili held Yi Qianqian and shouted at Oming, I'm not drunk. Yi Qianqian also followed Eulili's example and shouted, I'm not drunk either. The two women put their arms around each other's shoulders and laughed out loud. Then they walked inside, stumbling, and it seemed that they were not in a good state. Oming's lips twitched as if he were looking at two mentally retarded people. Some men passing by also stared at the two of them. Alarm bells rang in Oming's heart, and he followed them in. The security guard saw Oming behind them and felt something was wrong, so he asked, Who are you? Oming pointed to Eulili and said, I am her boyfriend. Liar, you have been there all night. Are you going to do something bad? The security guard looked at Oming suspiciously. Oming was a little helpless and shouted, Eulili. What? Eulili shouted drunkenly. Shut up, you are so annoying. Oming looked at the security guard and said, You see, she has this reaction when she is drunk. I will send them up and then come down. The security guard looked at him suspiciously, and after confirming that Eulili and Yi Qianqian both knew him, he let him in. Yi Qianqian pressed the button for the elevator and walked into the elevator with her arm around Eulili's shoulder. The two of them stumbled drunkenly together. Oming was afraid that they would fall, so he wanted to carry Eulili away. But what about Yi Qianqian? He had to watch them from behind and not let them fall. Finally, he followed them up. Oming watched them enter the password and secretly remembered it. Then he saw Yi Qianqian take out the key drunkenly. Oming, why is it so complicated to open the door? Isn't it better to just get a password? But fortunately, the two women were drunk and confused, and the man behind them didn't notice. At the same time, Oming was a little angry at the vigilance of the two women. Fortunately, it was him who followed them. If it was another man, what would he do? Seeing the two of them fall on the sofa, Oming finally breathed a sigh of relief. He went forward and pulled Eulili up. Eulili wriggled a little and shouted impatiently, What are you doing? Don't touch me. Oming pinched her nose and said in a low voice, How dare you talk to me like that? Eulili opened her eyes in a daze and seemed to see Oming. She sneered and said, I still want to hit you, pervert. Oming's face darkened. He picked her up and said, Which is your room? Eulili didn't want him to hold her. She straightened her legs and stretched her arms out. She shouted, Don't touch me. Don't touch me. You be *tch. Don't touch me. Go hug another woman, go scumbag ba. Oming's face was gloomy, and he bent her legs. Eulili screamed drunkenly, but soon she straightened her legs again. Suddenly, Yi Qianqian jumped up from the sofa and shouted, Get up! People who don't want to be slaves. Chapter 986. Oming took a deep breath, and directly carried Eulili on his shoulder. Eulili's body was suspended in the air. She struggled with her hands and feet and shouted, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" Yi Qianqian looked at this side in confusion. After noticing the movement here, Yi Qianqian was a little angry. She put her hands on her hips and shouted, "Who are you? Tell me your name." Oming held Eulili in his arms and felt a headache. In the past, Eulili would just lie down and sleep after drinking. How could she go crazy when she was drunk? Sure enough, she was influenced by the company she kept. This Yi Qianqian is really, hey. Oming tried not to let her see him. He tried to open a door and walked in. Fortunately, he saw Eulili's digital screen the next day. He carried Eulili and walked inside. However, Eulili suddenly became quiet and said drunkenly, "What are you doing? Why are you walking around in front of me?" Eulili's head was behind him. Oming turned around and saw Yi Qianqian at a glance. Yi Qianqian held a basin in her hand and said, Don't be afraid. I will help you kill the bad guys." Oming had an ominous premonition in his heart. Sure enough, before he could say anything, he saw a basin of cold water splashed in his direction. "Ah!" Eulili screamed and struggled hard. She screamed, "What are you doing? Why did you pour it on me? I am a good person." Oming loosened his hand and put Eulili down at once. Oming closed his eyes, wiped his face, and opened his eyes to look at Yi Qianqian. But Yi Qianqian snorted and said seriously, "If you don't accompany me to kill the bad guys, then I have to build a new communist society alone." Oming suddenly felt that it was a mistake for him to follow them, a big mistake. These two people are so tough. What kind of danger can they encounter? I am afraid it is others who are in danger. Eulili crawled toward Yi Qianqian from the ground and shouted, "Help, I can't swim. I am going to drown." Yi Qianqian looked at Eulili, who was crawling on the ground, and said with contempt, "Silly girl. Do you think that is really a swimming pool?" Oming face-bombed, but he finally felt a little relieved. At least he knew it wasn't a swimming pool. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianqian stared at Eulili for a long time before saying, "That's shallow water. She won't drown." Eulili's eyes were wide open. She was a little confused. "Really?" Yi Qianqian nodded with a serious face and said, "It's true. If you don't believe me, stand up and take a look." Eulili stupidly stood up with a look of surprise. It's true. Oming couldn't stand it anymore. Such a brainless conversation was simply irritating to the ears. He walked up to Yi Qianqian and pushed her out. He locked the door from the inside. Yi Qianqian slammed on the door and shouted, "What are you doing? Why are you chasing me away?" Oming felt like he was about to collapse. He shouted toward the outside, "There are explosives inside. It's dangerous. Report the situation here to the organization. The future of the country depends on you, comrade." When Yi Qianqian heard it, she immediately became serious and shouted, "Yes, sir." Oming breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, she drove him away. He turned around and saw Eulili, who had been splashed with water by Yi Qianqian. He sighed and turned over her pajamas. When he was about to pull her up, he found that Eulili was staring at him with her eyes open. Oming's heart skipped a beat. He thought she was sober, but then Eulili said, "Comrade, where is the bomb hidden?" Chapter 987. Oming was speechless. He picked her up and patted her on the butt. "Shut up. The bomb has been solved. The organization asked me to help you put on the bulletproof vest." "No." Eulili covered her chest with her hands and looked at Oming in front of her with a dangerous expression. Oming was going crazy. He took a deep breath and asked, "Why?" Eulili heard this question and was a little stunned. "Why?" Covering her chest, Eulili thought for a moment and said in a daze, "Because Oming will be angry." Oming's heart warmed when he heard that. Looking at her silly look, he asked in a low voice, "Who is Oming?" "Oming is AB*TCH. Eulili said confidently. Oming's original expectations were all gone. He lifted her up and said, "Behave." No. Eulili's mouth was dry and she was about to cry. "Oming will be angry. Is Oming so terrible when he is angry? Is he scared to cry?" Oming felt a little funny and asked, What will happen when Oming is angry? I'll scold you, and I'll step on you. It hurts, it hurts. Yulili burst into tears. It really hurts, Shen Luoan said. Oming suddenly felt that he didn't quite understand what she was saying. He didn't deny cursing, but when did he step on her? But Oming was a little helpless and said, Be good. Your clothes are wet. I will change them for you. No. I am Oming. Oming sighed and said helplessly, So, Oming will not be angry, will not curse you, and will not step on you. Be good, change your wet clothes, and then go to sleep, okay? Really? Yulili stopped crying and looked at Oming blankly. Looking at his face for a long time, she asked again, Really? Oming nodded with certainty and said, Yes, it's true. It can't be wrong. With that, Oming reached out to lift her clothes and coaxed her in a coaxing tone. Come on, put on the bulletproof vest. Oh, then, Yulili really didn't move and let Oming change her clothes for her. After changing, Yulili's eyes were closed, and her breathing was even. She had fallen asleep. Oming felt a little helpless and gently put her on the bed. After covering her with the blanket, he planted a gentle kiss on her lips. Then he stood up and walked out. There was still a comrade outside who had gone to report to the organization. If he got lost, it would be a grave sin. When he walked out, he saw that half of Yi Qianqian's body was hidden under the dining table, and the other half was exposed. She was holding the basin of water that she had just splashed. Her face was up, and her mouth was slightly open. She was snoring softly. She was fast asleep. He could not bear to look at it. Oming covered his eyes, took a blanket from the sofa, and covered her with it. Then, he walked back into Yulili's room. Yi Qianqian was awakened by the cold. He opened his eyes and realized that he was lying on the floor like a lunatic. He got up abruptly, but his forehead hit the leg of the dining table. Dong! Yi Qianqian covered her forehead and wailed. Oh my God! Do you have to do this? At the same time, Yulili walked out of the room and rubbed her eyes. Yi Qianqian felt a splitting headache. Why was she sleeping on the floor? Sleeping on the floor was one thing, but why was there a basin of water next to her? Chapter 988. Yi Qianqian wanted to cry. She got up with the help of the table leg and said, How did we come back last night? Yulili was a little confused and said blankly, Did we come back by taxi? Then why are we different? Yi Qianqian was cold. Looking at Yulili's pajamas, she rubbed her arms and jumped. I slept on the floor, and you slept on the bed. Why? Why didn't you wake me up? It's so cold on the floor. Yulili was also a little confused. She frowned and shook her head. I don't know. I forgot. I have a headache. I also have a headache. Yi Qianqian also looked painful and said, Forget it. I'm going to take a bath to warm myself. I'm freezing. Yi Qianqian took her pajamas and took a bath. Yulili went to the kitchen to make 2 glasses of honey water. She drank one and put the other on the table. She shouted, Qianqian, there is honey water outside. Remember to drink it. Okay. Yi Qianqian responded while taking a bath. Then Yulili finished drinking and went back to the room. But inadvertently, she saw a dry water stain on the ground, and there was a footprint on it. The footprint was very big. Yulili compared it and was sure that it was a man's foot. But who could it be? Yulili subconsciously thought of Oming's face. Last night, I seem to have seen him. Is it him? After carrying me back, he changed my clothes. Then he just left Yi Qianqian alone? The more Yulili thought about it, the more likely it was. Damn it. I can't remember. Yulili knocked her head and fell on the bed like a corpse. When Yi Qianqian came out of the bath, the honey water was still warm. She walked to Yulili's room with a headache. At a glance, she saw Yulili lying on the bed, gradually falling asleep, but her hands were covering her face. It seemed that she wanted to block the light. Yi Qianqian felt a little funny when she saw Yulili like this. She picked up her mobile phone and took a selfie of herself and the honey water in her hand. Standing in front of Yulili's table, she clearly took the picture. After taking the picture, Yi Qianqian posted it on WeChat Moments and edited. The flower of the editorial department covers her face to sleep because she can't see anyone without makeup. As soon as it was posted, many people commented. Ha 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 ha. There were quite a number of people who liked the post. When Yi Qianqian saw the comments below, she was in a good mood and laughed out loud. Yi Qianqian clicked on the notifications one by one. Suddenly, she saw a cute cartoon pig head. It was Shanyu. Shanyu liked it. When Yi Qianqian saw Shanyu, she subconsciously thought of all the unfriendliness Shanyu had shown her during this period of time. This unfriendliness was fine when it came to Yu Lily, but when it came to Yi Qianqian, Yu Lily almost couldn't help but want to punch her. If Yi Qianqian hadn't stopped her, she had no doubt that Yu Lily would have taught Shanyu a lesson. At the very least, Shanyu was no match for Yu Lily when it came to fighting. Yi Qianqian didn't care about it, but she soon saw Shanyu's comment. The digital screen at the back looks so familiar. Yi Qianqian didn't know if it was an illusion, but she inexplicably felt that Shanyu's words had a hidden meaning. Chapter 989. When Yi Qianqian returned to her room, she picked up her phone and scrolled through her WeChat moments. She immediately saw Yi Yuyu's selfie. In the selfie, Yi Yuyu's long hair draped over her shoulders, revealing her fair and delicate side profile. She was smiling, and behind her was a retro telephone. It should be something from the Shen family. There were words on it. Contentment brings happiness. Yi Qianqian's heart ached when she saw those words. Yi Qianqian felt both sympathy and envy for her younger sister, whom she had been separated from at a young age. Yi Qianqian sympathized with Yi Qianqian's unhappiness in her family, but at the same time, she envied Yi Qianqian's wealth in her family. She also envied Yi Qianqian's horizons and social circle. Yi Qianqian followed her mother, and her stepfather was an honest working-class man. Yi Qianqian liked Yi Yuyu's post and sent a smiley face. When Yi Yuyu saw Yi Qianqian's message, she smiled and quickly put her phone away. Shen Luoan was busy with work. After the winter solstice, he continued to be busy. Everyone in the family was busy. Shen Jilya and Shen Manting were going to Kingstown together. Coincidentally, Yi Yuyu had a schedule in Kingstown, so they agreed to go together. However, to everyone's surprise, old Mrs. Shen refused to let Yi Yuyu leave. She insisted that she stay one more day. Yi Yuyu had no choice but to stay for another day and let Shen Jilya and Shen Manting leave first. After Shen Jilya and Shen Manting left, old Mrs. Shen said, "I want to go to Kingstown too." Seeing Yi Yuyu's surprise, old Mrs. Shen sneered with dissatisfaction and said in a somewhat bitter tone, "What? You're an actress, and you're afraid of bringing an old woman like me with you? Are you afraid of losing face?" When Yi Yuyu heard that, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly waved her hands and explained, "There's no such thing, Grandma. How would I dare to do that? It's just that it will take a long time to get to Kingstown. If we take a plane, I'm afraid. I took the high-speed train the last time. This time, let's take the high-speed train together." Old Mrs. Shen glanced at Yi Yuyu, but her expression remained haughty. Seeing the embarrassment on Yi Yuyu's face, old Mrs. Shen said with a straight face, "You don't want to? Just now, little uncle and little aunt were together. Why didn't you? It's impossible for them to bring me there. If Long Yu finds out, they will definitely be scolded." Yi Yuyu was speechless. She would be scolded too. Moreover, because she was an outsider, she would be scolded even more harshly. Old Mrs. Shen seemed to know what she was thinking, but she didn't care. She looked at her arrogantly and said, "You don't want to? Yesterday, you said that you would be filial to him, but now I've forgotten about it. How hypocritical." Yi Yuyu felt that it was inappropriate and said, "Grandma, do you want to tell Mom and Dad? I think you just can't wait to take me along. If I tell them, will they let me out?" Old Mrs. Shen was furious. She stood up from the sofa and said angrily, "Forget it. I'll go by myself. You just want me to go out and get killed, don't you? I've seen through you a long time ago." Yi Yuyu couldn't bear to hear that. She pulled the old lady and said, "Grandma, I'll take you there." Old Mrs. Shen had expected this. She snorted and said, "Help me pack my things. We'll leave in the afternoon." Chapter 990. The old lady was the one in charge of the family. No matter what the Shen family wanted to do, as long as they didn't get the approval of the old lady, they couldn't do it. Except Shen Luoan's marriage to her. However, there was nothing between her and Shen Luo, and except a marriage certificate and a ring. There was no wedding, no wedding photos, and no sex between husband and wife. Everything seemed like it was just a make-do. Only she was trying her best to cater to him. If you love him, you have to cater to everything about him, right? The weekend passed quickly. After Yu Lily handed over the 5th episode of Love Transaction on Sunday night, the dramatic reversal of the plot caused a lot of controversy. Also because of Love Transaction, the number of downloads of the Eurasian Comics app increased, and the number of downloads was in the tens of thousands. Yi Qianqian's performance skyrocketed, and she became the queen of performance that many people in the editorial department envied. Monday. It was rare that Yi Qianqian didn't ride the bike. She was a little excited and walked with Yu Lily. Yu Lily chatted with Yi Qianqian all the way to the company. After they said hello, they saw the surrounding colleagues pointing at them and whispering to each other. Yi Qianqian sat in her seat, but as soon as she sat down, she heard her boss, Editor-in-Chief Zhou, shouting, "Yi Qianqian, come to my office." Editor-in-Chief Zhou rarely talked to Yi Qianqian. This old woman was a little cold. Recently, except for some boys in the technical department, and Yu Lily, Editor-in-Chief Zhou rarely talked to anyone. It was the first time that she directly called out Yi Qianqian for trouble like today. Everyone's eyes fell on Yi Qianqian, and they whispered. Yi Qianqian had no idea what was going on, and so did Yu Lily. Seeing Yi Qianqian being called into the office, Yu Lily looked around. She found that everyone's eyes were strange, except for Shan Yu. She sat next to Yi Qianqian with a calm face, and was picking up a stack of contracts. Shan Yu had been targeting her, and Yi Qianqian, more than once or twice recently. Seeing Shan Yu's appearance, Yu Lily was sure that this matter must have something to do with her. Yu Lily stood up and didn't directly ask Shan Yu. Instead, she asked a colleague next to her, "What's the matter? Why is everyone acting so weird today?" The colleague looked at Yu Lily with a strange expression and asked, "Are you living with Yi Qianqian?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" The colleague's expression became even weirder. "We suspect that she pocketed the gift that was supposed to be given to the painter. It's worth a lot. Chief Editor Zhou may be checking with her now." When Yu Lily heard that, she frowned and blurted out, "How is that possible? If Yi Qianqian would do something like that, how could I not know?" "There is only one truth," Shan Yu suddenly said. She stood up and looked at Yu Lily. "You two are in cahoots. Of course, you have to pretend to be stupid. Otherwise, how could you not know such a big thing was placed there?" Yu Lily was annoyed to see Shan Yu like this. She snorted and asked, "What did Yi Qianqian take away? Is it expensive? How much?" Chapter 991. Shan Yu looked at Yu Lily with a distressed look and said, "I didn't expect you to be such a person. You are in cahoots with each other." When Yu Lily heard that, she laughed and said, "How did you know? See, you admit it?" Shan Yu looked at her with a disappointed look and said, "Last time, I saw the chat window between you and Yi Qianqian. I clearly saw that you were chatting, and you were talking about gifts." Yu Lily heard this and subconsciously looked back, but she couldn't remember. After all, it had been a long time. However, hearing such words, Yu Lily shook her head and said, "Your glasses are so old. How can you see those things so clearly?" As she spoke, Yu Lily reached out to Shan Yu's eyes. Shan Yu's face changed. She reflexively reached out and patted Yu Lily's hand, shouting, "Yu Lily, don't go too far." Yu Lily's face also darkened. She sneered, looked at her angrily, and said sarcastically, "I just want to see if your thick glasses are as ugly as you look." The merciless sarcasm made Shan Yu's face suddenly distorted. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Shut up. What's the saying?" Yu Lily deliberately tilted her head and thought for a moment, then said, "Ah, ugly people make more trouble. It probably means you, right?" Not being good-looking had always been the biggest pain in Shan Yu's heart. Usually, people around her knew that she was sensitive, so they rarely used such an obvious weakness to satirize her. Hearing Yu Lily's words, Shan Yu's eyes were red with anger. She flew into a rage and shouted, "Don't go too far. So what if you are good-looking? You are still a thief. You don't know how to dispose of the stolen goods. You were caught by others, but you still have such an attitude. You are shameless." Yu Lily heard this and smiled proudly. She raised her eyebrows and said, "There are many benefits to being good-looking. For example, people will not say that ugly people make more trouble." Shan Yu was even more angry and shouted, "You thief, how dare you quibble? When did I quibble?" Yu Lily retorted, "Do you know what quibbling means? You don't know what it means, yet you're still using random words. Didn't your language teacher die early? If he knew that you were using words so carelessly, wouldn't he be so angry that he wouldn't rest in peace?" Shan Yu was at a loss for words. She stared at Yu Lily with her red eyes and paused for a moment before saying, "So you admit it?" What did he admit? Yu Lily looked at her hopeless expression and laughed proudly. "You're so stupid. Don't try to frame others. Yes, the digital screen is indeed in our possession." Yu Lily looked at Yi Qianqian with a smile. "See." Shan Yu was overjoyed. She looked around at her colleagues and said, "Admit it." The surrounding colleagues all looked at each other and said one after another, "It can't be. I can't believe Yi Qianqian would do such a thing. She relied on Li Xiaoyu to get to where she is today. She even swallowed Li Xiaoyu's digital screen. How terrifying. Sigh, looks like we won't be able to be kind this time." Chapter 992. Did you steal it? Shan Yu looked at Yu Lily incredulously, but in her heart she was even more proud. Originally, she just wanted Yi Qianqian to pay a little price, but she didn't expect that Yu Lily would be directly exposed. If this matter were to be carried out, then Yu Lily would definitely not be able to get the promotion that she originally had. Moreover, Yu Lily was still a newcomer. Maybe she would be fired directly. Shan Yu was a little excited in her heart, but she still pretended to be calm and looked at Yu Lily in front of her. Yu Lily snorted and said, "The company gave it to me, so of course it is mine." "You." Shan Yu heard that and laughed. "This is for Li Xiaoyu, right? Are you Li Xiaoyu?" "Yes, I'm Li Xiaoyu," Yu Lily said calmly. But let alone Shan Yu, even other colleagues didn't believe it. Shan Yu laughed and said, "Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? If you are really Li Xiaoyu, then you are as arrogant as the people above you." Yu Lily heard Shan Yu's words, also laughed and said, "Do you think you know me very well? Idiot. I am not a fairy that an ugly person like you can see through." Shan Yu's face turned greener and she roared, "Yu Lily, you are shameless. I am not like you. How can I not have such a beautiful face? What are you arguing about?" The voice of Editor-in-Chief, Zhou, came out at the same time as Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian walked toward Yu Lily, but she stared straight at Shan Yu and said, "What hatred do I have for you? Why do you frame me like this?" Editor-in-Chief Zhou came over, looked at Shan Yu and said, "I have asked about the matter. The digital screen has indeed been sent out." Shan Yu was stunned and said, "What's going on? Is it, Yu Lily, are you Li Xiaoyu?" Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at Yu Lily with surprise in her eyes. "Love transaction was drawn by you?" "Yes." Yu Lily smiled brightly and nodded. "It turns out that you didn't know. I thought you could see it backstage." Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at Yu Lily for a long time, shook her head, laughed and said, "I didn't expect you to be so powerful. When Yi Qianqian told me just now, I didn't believe her. I did a background check, and even matched her ID number. Sigh, I didn't expect that." Editor-in-Chief Zhou's words stunned everyone around her. Shan Yu's expression suddenly became interesting. Looking at Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian, she seemed a little embarrassed and embarrassed. She looked at Yu Lily and said, "You are Li Xiaoyu? How could that be?" Yi Qianqian had never been cold to anyone, but this time she couldn't help it. She looked at Shan Yu with a sullen face and said, "I'm not like you. You are useless all day long and full of bad ideas. You actually want to frame me? F***ck. I'm not bad to you, right? Why do you have to do this?" Shan Yu's face turned even paler. She looked at Yi Qianqian and shouted, "Qianqian." Editor-in-Chief Zhou, I don't need her to be my assistant anymore. Shanyu is absent-minded during work every day. There have been several contract problems, and I have to solve them myself. She is not serious and responsible, and she is forgetful. She is so annoying. Dash. Chapter 993. Shanyu's face finally changed. She shouted, Qianqian, I didn't do that. Don't frame me. You know in your heart whether I did it or not. I've had enough of it. I'm your boss, but you give me a cold shoulder every day. Editor-in-Chief Zhou, you do as you see fit. Anyway, I don't want her to be my assistant. It's boring. It's as if everything she does is my fault. So you're blaming me for being ugly and useless? Every word that Yi Qianqian said was very hurtful. Yu Lily raised her eyebrows and looked at Yi Qianqian. They saw a tacit understanding in each other's eyes. It was easy to pick up each other's habits after spending a long time with each other. If it had been before, Yi Qianqian would never have said such a thing. Now that she had said it, she didn't feel guilty at all. Shanyu was speechless. Editor-in-Chief Zhou looked at Shanyu and said, Shanyu, come in with me. Editor-in-Chief, Zhou took the lead and walked into the office. Shanyu stood in the same place. After looking at Yi Qianqian and Yu Lily, she followed Editor-in-Chief Zhou into the office. As soon as Shanyu and Editor-in-Chief Zhou left, they all came to Yu Lily incredulously and asked, Lily, so you are Li Xiaoyu? Oh my god, the goddess was hiding around us. None of us found out. You are so low-key. Yu Lily felt their incredible eyes. She smiled unconsciously and said, It's okay. I'm just afraid that if I say it, I will face your eyes of worship. It will be very stressful. When everyone heard this, they rolled their eyes and quickly dispersed. Yu Lily looked very frustrated and said, Don't do this. Don't leave me alone. However, no one paid attention to her. It was no different from usual. Yu Lily looked disappointed, but in her heart, she breathed a sigh of relief. Yu Lily continued to work. She was still doing the same work as usual, but today seemed to be destined to be a little different. Shanyu stayed in Editor-in-Chief Zhou's office for a long time before she came out. Her eyes were red, and she stared at Yu Lily with jealousy. Then, Yu Lily was also called in. Editor-in-Chief Zhou sat in front of the computer, looked at Yu Lily and said, Shanyu is still not suitable here. I learned that she is not very popular and forgetful, so I transferred her to the front desk. Now there is only one person who can be promoted to the position of editor, and it can only be you. Yu Lily had expected it, but she still couldn't help but be surprised. Her eyes lit up, and she looked at Editor-in-Chief Zhou in front of her and shouted, Really? Well, let's not talk about your identity as Li Xiaoyu first. You're very capable in all aspects. Of course this position is yours. Good luck. More importantly, Editor-in-Chief Zhou had once faced the crisis of being fired, and it was Yu Lily who helped her stay. Yu Lily should be promoted regardless of whether it was for the public or for personal reasons. Yu Lily cheered and shouted, Thank you, Chief Editor Zhou. Editor-in-Chief Zhou nodded and said, Go to work. Ask Yi Qianqian to take you. All right. Yu Lily walked out and quickly entered a new state of work. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.